What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto found a scroll that teleported him into a random girl's room every night? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Tsunade stared out the window of Hokage Tower, both hands behind her back. The sun was setting, so her appointment should be arriving any minute now. Truth be told, she didn't want him to arrive. She had a bad feeling about this mission, especially since the two of them had been requested. It wasn't unusual for him to be called out on missions, nor was it unusual for people to request the two of them together. It was just this one mission she felt uncomfortable with. A sound behind her alerted her to the appearance of her appointment and, sighing, she spun around to face him. He was bent on one knee, his right hand clenched above his heart, his left fist against the ground and his head bowed. She stared at the silver-haired man before her, wearing his Anbu mask, and sighed, sitting in her chair. "Here's your mission." She held out a scroll as he rose, taking it from her hands. "The two of you were requested." "Not surprising," the baritone male replied, opening the scroll and scanning it. Tsunade couldn't help but stare at him worriedly. She had an incredibly bad feeling about this mission. She didn't want this man to leave her office, because he would go collect the other one, and they would leave. Sensing her gaze, the man looked up. "Hokage-sama? Be careful, Kakashi," she said to him. "I have a bad feeling about this mission." "Bad feeling? Just watch him, alright? Make sure you both come back safe. We've been on countless missions together, Hokage-sama. There is no need to worry. We shall both be fine." He bowed to her before performing a seal and disappearing in a cloud of smoke. Tsunade stood and turned back to her window, looking out at what she'd been staring at before. On the head of the fourth Hokage sat a solitary figure, staring down at the village. Seconds later, another form joined him and the two of them disappeared in a puff of smoke. Tsunade turned and clutched her chest, frowning. She just couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go horribly wrong. "Sakura-san." Haruno Sakura spun around. "Hi Lee." The pink-haired woman smiled at her friend. "What brings you here?" "Sakura-san, Ino has informed me that you haven't returned home for the last week." "Not since Naruto-kun and Kakashi-san have left." Sakura's smile fell off her face. It had been fake, anyway, so it hadn't been hard to make it fade. "Naruto-kun will be fine. You must return home. Rest." "I know." Sakura insisted with a sigh, turning to look at the gates of Konoha. "I know he'll be fine. I can't lose him like I lost Sasuke. He's become too important." She turned and offered Rock Lee another smile. "He's like an annoying little brother, you know? I can't help but miss him. And worry about him." She clenched her fists, staring at the ground. Lee let out a sigh and put his hand on her shoulder, understanding how Sakura was feeling. Uzumaki Naruto, Hitaki Kakashi and Haruno Sakura were the closest team in all of Konoha. She was always like this when the other two were away. She worried, and she hated being apart from Naruto. The two of them had become better friends than anyone had ever imagined they could. They shared an incredibly strong bond. They both knew they were all the other had. After Sasuke had left them, they'd had no choice but to depend on each other. Sakura would never admit it, but the 3 years Naruto had been gone had been the hardest years of her life. She'd felt as if two of her teammates had abandoned her, even though she knew Naruto had done no such thing. When he'd returned, they'd bonded and become like brother and sister. Sakura spent most of her nights at Naruto's when she was upset. They wouldn't talk, he would just hold her, hug her, tell her someone still loved her, even if it wasn't the kind of love she wanted. Naruto had grown out of his childish crush long ago, and had focused on being a good ninja. Before, if anyone ever asked Naruto why he wanted to be great, the answer was simple: "I'm going to be the Hokage someday." Now, the answer was different. "I have to be strong. I'm the only one who can save Sasuke. I made a promise to Sakura-chan. I promised I would bring Sasuke home." Before anyone knew it, the rookie 9 weren't rookies anymore, and the 12-year-olds who'd fumbled and screwed up all the time had become 17-year-olds with high-ranking positions. Naruto had the highest, having entered the Anbu. Sakura was next, being just below Shizune and Tsunade in medical. They weren't kids anymore. "Sakura-san." She turned to look at Lee. "Please, go home tonight." "I will, Lee." She smiled. "I will, I promise. I just want to wait a little while longer." Sakura turned back to the gates in time to see something rushing towards her. She frowned as she realized it was a dog. Lee walked towards the gates, and Sakura followed him, the two watching the dog approach. Sakura, Pakun. Sakura sprinted through the gates, rushing towards the dog. If Pakun had been sent, this was bad. What is it? What happened? It was an ambush. Kakashi and Naruto are injured, badly injured. Sakura's heart stopped beating. Sakura-san, you follow Pakun and help them. I shall get the Hokage and wait Kiba so he can follow the scent. Lee rushed away as Sakura found the will to move, following the dog hurriedly through the trees. How far are they? Sakura asked urgently. About 2 miles out. Kakashi managed to get this far before he collapsed from exhaustion. He was able to summon me and send me to fetch whoever could come. Pakun looked at Sakura sadly. It looked bad, Sakura. Show me, she said simply, trying to remain calm. They jumped through a last set of trees and Sakura saw them. Kakashi was still conscious, breathing hard and clutching Naruto tightly to his chest. Neither wore their Anbu masks anymore. Kakashi-sensei. Sakura landed a little ways away and rushed to them. Sakura, Naruto, The older man trailed off, breathing hard. He had a deep wound running across his chest from right shoulder to left hip. Blood caked his silver hair and one of his arms had a bone sticking out through the skin. Sakura bent down beside him but he slapped her hands away. No, Naruto. The girl turned to her other teammate and her eyes widened. He had been clutched against Kakashi's chest, so at first, she'd missed his injuries. He'd only appeared to have a few small wounds on his back, but now that she saw his front, she began to hyperventilate, everything she'd learned medically being thrown out the window. Oh my god, Naruto. She pulled him away from Kakashi and laid the blonde on his back, tears stinging her eyes. Oh god, oh my god, Naruto, stay with me. Forcing herself to calm down, she forced chakra into her hands and brought them to his neck where a huge wound had exposed his entire throat, almost all the way to the bone. Chapter 1. How Things Have Become. 1 year later, something hit Inuzuka Kiba in the back of the head and he spun around, annoyed. Ow, damn it, Naruto, I told you I don't know. The Anbu captain cocked a disbelieving eyebrow, crossing his arms. Kiba winced. He knew that stance. He was going to speak, or the other man was going to make him. Sighing, he shook his head. Fine. He went to sand, okay. Sand. He threw his arms in the air in exasperation. A year ago, the dog boy wouldn't have bothered giving in to the blonde's annoying tactics at finding out information. Of course, back then, he hadn't been an Anbu captain. And he hadn't had his condition. Naruto snapped his fingers at Kiba, catching the other man's attention. Shaking his head, Kiba sighed, and continued, I should have known that wouldn't be enough. Damn it, Naruto, you're going to get me fired. The brunette rubbed the back of his head before looking around to ensure Amino Iruka wasn't anywhere nearby. He then leaned forward, the blonde doing the same. He was given a mission to go see Gaara about a request for assistance in finding Sound's stronghold. I think Tsunade wants to send in a team to get Sasuke before the end of the year. The 3-year mark is coming up again, and I don't think we'll be as lucky as last time. This time, nothing will go wrong, and he'll transfer to Sasuke's body. Inuzuka. Both men jumped and turned to look at the door, where Iruka stood with his arms crossed. You're not giving out mission details again, are you? Of course not, Kiba exclaimed, waving his hands wildly. I was just discussing the weather. The weather? Don't lie, you're bad at it. Iruka sighed, shaking his head. Naruto, when Kakashi doesn't tell you where he's going, it's because he isn't allowed to. Naruto began to respond when Iruka stopped him. Don't give me excuses, you know the rules. And Inuzuka, if you don't stop telling this guy mission details, I'll take you out of this office. Mission assignments are not to be disclosed to anyone other than their recipients, is that understood? Yes, Iruka-sensei. Kiba grumbled. I can understand Naruto's annoyance though. He's friendlier with Gaara, why wasn't he sent? Because he is needed here. Iruka insisted, walking further into the room and placing a hand on Naruto's shoulder. It's not a dangerous mission. He'll be back soon. Naruto merely nodded before smiling brightly at the two of them and exiting the room with a wave. The other two waved back and he closed the door. Once he'd left, Iruka turned to Kiba, scowling. You know very well not to disclose information, Kiba. I know, but how can I resist when he looks at me like that? Kiba motioned the door the blonde had just walked out of with both hands. It's the eyes. The eyes. Don't fall for his puppy eyes. Iruka insisted as he grabbed a pile of mission reports and straightened them before putting them in a folder. He looked at Kiba as he tucked the folder under his arm and frowned as he noticed the other man staring down at the table before him, a sad look on his face. I miss how he used to be. Kiba whispered. When he smiles, it never reaches his eyes. He's never happy, not really. Iruka sighed, sitting down in the chair across from Kiba, placing the folder down on the table. We all miss him, Kiba. Too many horrible things have happened in the last few years. You can't blame him for having change. Especially after. I'm going to go for my break. Kiba stood up, turning and walking out of the room. Iruka sighed, staring down at the folder in front of him. You're not the only one who runs away when I bring that up. Iruka whispered to Kiba, even though he knew the other man had left the room. Kakashi-sensei doesn't like to hear about it, either. He still feels it's his fault. Hitaki Kakashi stood before the cage, the red-haired man staring out the window. He hadn't said a word since Kakashi had spoken about the Hokage's request. Kakashi suspected it was because Gaara had wanted Naruto to be the one to deliver the message. Naruto had been on a mission, and this was of utmost importance to Tsunade. It wasn't Kakashi's fault. Fine sound, Sabaku no Gaara finally said, turning to look at Kakashi with piercing green eyes. To rescue Sasuke? Yes, Kage-sama. Why rescue someone who left of their own free will? It would merely be an inconvenience to save someone who does not deserve it, nor does he want it. If Orochimaru manages to succeed in transferring bodies, it puts everyone at risk. The Sharingan is a powerful weapon, and in the wrong hands, war will break out throughout the 5 countries. Do you not remember the chaos Orochimaru caused almost 6 years ago when he attacked Konoha during the Chunin exam? He tricked Sand into believing it was the current Kage's wish. Gaara stared at Kakashi impassively. Saving Sasuke will not hinder Orochimaru's plans. He knows Sasuke will seek him out again, he will merely wait for the boy to return to him. This may be so, but if we detain him long enough, the transfer will not occur, and we will be able to buy ourselves another 3 years, just like last time. Why save this boy? Gaara inquired. Why not merely kill him? Was he not the one who tried to kill Naruto? Yes. Kakashi replied evenly. But he is important to our village. He is a missing nin. Gaara corrected. He has been for the last 5.5 years. If you have managed to survive this long without him, I am sure his loss will not cause you any inconvenience. This is the Hokage's wish. Kakashi stressed. He will not be treated as a member of Konoha society, and he will not be allowed to leave the village for 5 years, but he is a valuable asset. He is an important person to our village. And to Naruto. Kakashi knew that last bit was out of line, and he could get in trouble if Tsunade found out he'd pulled that card, but it was the truth. Everyone wanted Sasuke back, most especially Sakura and Naruto. If pulling the "this is what Naruto wants" card was the only way for Gaara to agree to help, Kakashi would do it. I shall think about it. Gaara finally said. Kakashi suppressed a smirk. Thank you, Kage-sama. He bowed slightly and turned to leave. He reached the door and was just about to open it, when Gaara spoke again. How is Naruto? Kakashi's hand froze over the knob and he couldn't help but clench his jaw. He's doing fine, Kakashi said, his back still to Gaara. He's beginning to act more like he used to. Do not try to fool me with lies, Kakashi. Gaara narrowed his eyes angrily. Do you think me stupid? Kakashi turned back to Gaara, shoving his hands in his pockets. What do you want me to say? If you know nothing's changed, why ask? He bit his tongue, forcing himself to calm down. He lowered his gaze to the floor. When he smiles, his eyes always look sad. We all talk about how we miss the way he used to be. How we wish he would go back to that. I don't think anyone realizes that he's the person who wishes that the most. They both stood in silence for a long while before Gaara turned his back on Kakashi, staring out the window. Will Naruto be sent on this retrieval? Yes. Kakashi saw no point in keeping this from Gaara. Very well. I shall offer my aid, but only because I want someone more talented backing up Naruto. Kakashi clenched his fists, staring at the floor. You think I don't know it was my fault? Kakashi asked angrily. You think I'm not aware of the fact that the blow he was hit with was meant for me? I never said you were not aware of it. Gaara turned to face Kakashi. I am merely saying I will send ninja who do not allow themselves to be put in danger, causing others to come to their aid. He turned his back on Kakashi again. That is all. Please inform the Hokage of my cooperation. Kakashi teleported out without bothering to bow. Hey, I heard Sensei is back. Kunitoki Hankusha told his two teammates as he hung upside down on a tree branch. You're lying. Takakura Yurusu insisted as she twirled a kunai between her fingers. He'd have come to see us by now. Make sure we're training. Maybe he's watching us. Yamauchi Niku insisted, looking around. Testing us, you know? He closed his eyes, putting his hands together, as if in prayer. Oh, not again. Hankusha sighed, rolling his eyes. Over there. The red-headed boy threw a kunai in a random direction. All three heard it hit a tree. Ah, clever. Clever. He moved. Niku pulled out another kunai and launched it across the clearing. Right there. Naruto appeared in a cloud of smoke, catching the kunai between his fingers easily. Urasu's jaw dropped. Hankusha fell out of the tree. You were right, Sensei, you're losing your touch. The Raven girl called to Naruto. He smirked, flipping the kunai in his hand and throwing it back at Niku. It landed at the redhead's feet and he bent down to pick it up. You were watching us, right? Hankusha asked as he stood, rubbing his head. You saw him throwing them in random directions and intercepted one before it hit someone, right? Naruto smiled and nodded, ruffling the brunette's hair. Hankusha pulled away from him annoyed. Oh, thank God. Yurusu sighed, one hand on her chest. For a minute there, I thought maybe Niku was actually good. Hey, I am good. I'm a genin, aren't I? Niku crossed his arms, miffed. Naruto just smiled. His team reminded him a lot of Team 7. Niku was like him. Yurusu was like Sakura, and Hankusha was like Sasuke, except not as impressive. No one could ever surpass Sasuke at that age. The only people who ever had were Kakashi and Itachi. Naruto-sensei? The blonde turned back to Yurusu as she frowned. You're thinking of the bastard guy again, aren't you? Naruto smiled, placing his hand on the raven's head and bending down in front of her. You shouldn't think of him. He's a traitor. Naruto continued to smile. He removed his hand from her head and tapped her nose. Yurusu just shook her head, a smile teasing her lips. He's not as cool as you, anyway. Hankusha insisted, crossing his arms. After all, you became an Anbu at the age of 16, and then you got us as your team last year. You must be the only 18-year-old in the entire history of Konoha with his own genin team. And you teach us awesome stuff. Niku added. Hankusha hit him across the back of the head. Ow. Yurusu did the same. Ow. Ow. Stop it, moron. Now he's going to give us a training schedule. Hankusha exclaimed, annoyed. They all looked at their sensei, and just as Hankusha said, he smiled at them as he held out 3 scrolls. Ah, man, I hate training. Niku whined as he took the scroll with his name. The other 2 grumbled as they did the same. Naruto then waved and began to walk away. Hey, where are you going? Yurusu asked. Are we training alone? Naruto merely nodded, not answering her first question. He'd gotten back an hour ago, and there was still someone he had to see. Naruto walked through the streets, waving at a few people who called out greetings to him, until he reached the hospital. Walking through the front doors, he nodded to the nurses on duty and headed for the stairs. Reaching the 3rd floor, he walked up to an open office door and leaned against the doorframe, smirking at the scene before him. Please, Hibayashi Moegi demanded, her hands pressed together. Please, Sakura? Moegi, I can't teach you any of this stuff until you're a chunin. You were a genin when you learned it all. Moegi insisted, stomping her foot. Why can't I become a medic nin, too? I didn't say you couldn't, you just need to give it more time. Naruto knocked lightly on the doorframe and both girls turned to the door, finally noticing he was there. He gave them a wave. Naruto Nissan. Moegi launched herself at him, hugging him tightly around the middle. How are you? Did you just get back from your mission? He smiled down at the brunette and patted her head as he nodded. You're not injured, are you? She leaned back and poked him in the chest a few times. He merely smiled before catching her hands in his own and shaking his head. Good, I'll go tell Konohamaru-chan you're back. Yeah, she waved at him and Sakura before running out of the office. Sakura stood from her seat as Naruto closed the door, shoving his hands in his pockets and leaning back against the wall. Without a word, the pink-haired girl walked up to him and began to inspect him for injuries with her eyes, trying not to make it look like she was. Naruto caught her by the chin with 2 fingers and smiled. Don't tell me you're okay. She narrowed her eyes. I'll kill you. Naruto let out a small puff of air as a laugh, shaking his head. He held up his hands and began to sign to her. I have no injuries, Sakura-chan. I haven't gotten any for a whole year. Sakura knew this was true. The last injury Naruto had ever received was the one that had left him without a voice. Naruto walked into his apartment and was immediately greeted with the scent of cooking. About time you got back, damn moron. Naruto just smiled as he shook his head, closing the door. For the life of him, he still didn't know why he got dinner cooked for him every day. A figure walked into the kitchen doorway, a rag in hand. Well, aren't you going to apologize or something? I was on a mission, cut me some slack, will you? He signed as he headed for his room, pulling his shirt off as he went. You were off visiting Large Forehead, and we both know it. Yamanaka Ino hollered after him. Naruto just smiled as he entered his room and closed the door. He didn't know why Ino came over to cook him dinner every day. She'd started doing it when they were 16, and he'd never gotten around to asking her why. Maybe she was worried about his health, but who knew? Naruto threw his shirt into a corner and grabbed his towel, heading for his bathroom to shower. As he entered the small room, his eyes looked anywhere but at the mirror above his sink. He hadn't been able to look in the mirror since his throat had been ripped out. He knew he'd never been one to scar, but it had been an awful wound. To this day, he still didn't know whether or not he had a scar on his neck, and he didn't want to know, either. The blonde showered quickly, the scent of food reaching him even behind the 2 closed doors of his bedroom and bathroom. He jumped out of the shower and toweled himself before pulling on a pair of black drawstring pants. With the towel around his neck, he exited his room, rubbing the end of the towel against the back of his head to dry his hair. Are you trying to make me drool? Ino demanded with a fake glare as she put a plate of food on the table. Naruto grinned at her. Sorry, Ino, I always forget how dashingly handsome I am, he signed to her. How you can forget is beyond me with the group of fangirls you've picked up over the years. Naruto plopped down in his seat and slapped his hands together, his new way of saying, Itadakimasu, since he could no longer yell it out. He began eating shortly after, Ino sitting across from him with her own plate. Naruto's appearance had changed drastically over the years, most notably during the last one. He'd lost all of his baby fat for muscle, looking particularly yummy to every pair of female eyes whenever he didn't have a shirt on. His tanned abdomen rippled with a six-pack, and his upper chest was so well-toned one would think a sculptor had visited Naruto while he slept and carved it out. His shoulders were strong and broad, and his arms were muscular. His face was long and lean, having lost all of the baby fat that gave him a round face, and his whisker marks had faded to a point where they were almost invisible. His blonde hair had grown, falling shaggily around his face and into his eyes, which were still an intense blue. He was a walking god, and not a single person would ever refute it. But, of course, he was still the demon vessel. Nothing had changed between him and the general populace. Girls would admit he was good-looking, but they would still stay away from him and call him a monster. He'd learned long ago not to care. He had friends, and even if they were few, they were enough. Heck, his genin's parents had specifically asked for Naruto to train their children, and always acted kindly towards the blonde Anbu captain. A few people had changed their minds about the demon vessel, but for the most part, nothing had really changed. A knock at the door interrupted the comfortable silence between the 2 blondes, and Ino stood up to answer it. No one stood there when she opened the door, so they both immediately knew who it was. Ino stayed by the door and Naruto calmly tilted his head slightly to the left just in time for a kunai to fly past it and embed itself into the wall. Just as I'd expect from my eternal rival. Damn it, Konohamaru. Ino hollered from the door, waving her fist angrily at the chunin perched on the windowsill. You're going to actually hit him one day. Why do you always aim for his head? If I hit him, he has no right to be an Anbu captain. He agrees with me, right, boss? Naruto just smirked down at his plate, his back still to Saito Konohamaru. Oh yeah, he agrees. Konohamaru-chan. Moegi appeared beside the chunin, causing a girlish shriek to emit from him. Ino burst out laughing. Naruto just smirked, shaking his head before turning to look at the 15-year-old. Chunin? Shut up. Konohamaru insisted as he jumped into the apartment, Moegi following suit. Konohamaru-chan, Sensei will get angry if he doesn't find you at the training grounds. Moegi reminded her teammate. Who cares about Sensei? Konohamaru waved his hand about irritably. How was your mission, boss? The blonde shrugged before turning back to his plate and continuing to eat, much to Konohamaru's annoyance. The Chunin sat down in the seat adjacent to the Anbu captain, the chair turned backwards so that he could rest his hands on the back, his chin resting on top of them. Ino closed the door and took her seat again as Moegi took the last remaining seat across from Konohamaru. Nobody spoke, Konohamaru staring at Naruto, Moegi staring at Konohamaru, and the two blondes staring down at their respective plates. As if on cue, there was another knock at the door 2 minutes later, and Konohamaru jumped out of his seat as if he'd been burned. Shit, I'm not here. The Chunin ran down the corridor, disappearing into the guest room and slamming the door behind himself. Moegi just rolled her eyes as she stood up and answered the door. Hey, Udon, sensei. Hello, Moegi. A smooth tenor replied as its owner walked into the apartment. Naruto simply raised a hand in greeting to Team 9 sensei. Hello, Naruto. Ino. How was your mission, Naruto? The blonde just shrugged, continuing to eat. He was used to this. It happened every time he returned from a long mission. Everyone somehow found themselves at his place and he spent the entire night having to make sure drunk people didn't break things while sober people proceeded to bombard him with questions on the missions he couldn't tell them details about. Long time no see, Ino said as she spun around in her chair, smirking. Not hiding, are you? The Raven boy glared at Ino as he closed the door, Udon and Moegi having retreated to the living room. As a matter of fact, I've been busy. Sure, Ino smirked. The fact that Urama Hiroko is in love with you has nothing to do with you disappearing all the time. Baikensai shuddered visibly before looking around the kitchen, as if he was worried said girl would randomly jump out and attach herself to him. He only had one stalker, and he was grateful, but the girl was damn persistent. The door opened and closed without a knock being heard, Sakura walking easily through the apartment, headed for Naruto's guest room. Hey, Ino pig, large forehead. Ino greeted as Sakura opened the door to the guest room, a shriek emitting from within. Out, Konohamaru. Sai knows you're here anyway. And if he didn't, the shriek informed him. Konohamaru was promptly shoved out of the room and the door closed with a slam. You know, it's a wonder why Sakura doesn't just become your roommate. She has practically everything she owns here, anyway. Ino commented, looking at Naruto. Heck, I almost never see her, and I am her roommate. Naruto just shrugged. In reality, he knew why she wasn't his roommate. He wouldn't let her be. He couldn't stop her from coming over and staying the night, this was true, but he didn't want her actually living with him. He didn't want people to think they were dating or anything and treat her horribly because of it. He was a monster, after all. Konohamaru, Sai said sternly. Hi, sensei. The Chunin exclaimed in his most respectful tone, as if trying to diminish his punishment. I'll have a new training schedule ready for you tomorrow. And I'll sit by and watch you do it all. The Raven smiled sadistically as Konohamaru groaned. Told you to just do it. Moegi exclaimed from the next room. Shut up. Konohamaru insisted as he disappeared into the living room to join Udon and Moegi. Sai let out a small laugh as he took one of the empty seats, leaning back comfortably and cracking his neck. How'd it go? Any problems? Naruto shook his head, wiping his mouth on a napkin and standing up to put his plate in the sink. He'd do the dishes later. There was no point in starting now, because he knew the sink would be full by the end of the night. He'd found that the less room there was to shove things in the sink, the less people tended to eat his food. He'd started piling the dishes up a long time ago to have less people eat. He found he went shopping for food way too often, and half the time, he never remembered eating all that much. There was a knock at the door and Ino called for whoever was outside to come in. The door opened, Nara Shikamaru and Akamichi Choji entering. Yo, the lazy Junin said as he raised one hand in greeting. You're back, what's for dinner? Choji asked immediately afterwards. I'm ashamed to call you my teammates. Ino hollered at the two by the door. Shikamaru just scoffed as he closed the door and put his hands back in his pockets. He walked to the table and sat down in one of the free seats, Choji going into the kitchen to grab some food. Oh, hey Shik, how's it going? Sakura asked as she emerged from down the corridor, tying her hair into a ponytail. It was still fairly short, so a few strands fell into her eyes and down her cheeks. Not bad. Came by to check on Naruto. And raid his fridge. Ino shot him an annoyed glare. I'm not the one in the kitchen, thank you very much. Shikamaru insisted as he leaned back in the chair he occupied. Naruto sighed. It was going to be another one of those nights. Naruto stretched as he made his way towards his bed, cracking his neck. He'd managed to convince Sakura to go home tonight. Well, okay. He'd gotten her drunk and had Ino take her home, but it was still better than her staying the night. The neighbors had started to notice, and Naruto was worried about her. The blonde pulled back the blue covers of his bed and got beneath them, stretching out on his back. He put both hands behind his head as he stared at the ceiling, scanning every crack and stain he saw. He'd memorized them all by now, but he liked to be sure he still remembered them perfectly. Letting out a sigh, he brought his hands up and performed a seal before his eyes closed and his hands fell limply to his sides. Naruto walked slowly across the water-covered floor, feeling the cold liquid sloshing around his feet and ankles, wetting the bottom of his drawstring pants. He shivered slightly as he walked through the corridors half-naked, cursing himself for always doing this right before going to sleep. Really, he should have known better by now. He emerged into a large room, which contained a large cage. The inside of the cage was drowned out in darkness. There were no eyes hovering in the air to stare down at the 18-year-old. There were no rows of sharp teeth to grin out at him the way they used to years ago. No, things were different now. Kyuubi-ji-san, Naruto called through the large expanse. A form appeared on the other side of the cage, and Naruto walked towards him, slowly. He was staring at himself, only, not. The person on the other side of the cage had flaming red hair, sharp red eyes and dark, thick whisker marks on his face. He also had long fangs and sharp nails that reminded Naruto of claws. He wore a shirt and pants similar to those Junin wore, except his were red. Not surprising to Naruto, in all honesty. You're back again, Kit? Kyuubi inquired as he leaned forward on his bars, smirking at his host. It always scared Naruto to see himself looking like that, even though he knew it wasn't actually him. Yeah, thought I'd come visit you. You didn't let me out this time. Kyuubi commented, a scowl on his face. This is the 5th Anbu mission you've been on without letting me out. I didn't need your help. I didn't think it had anything to do with needing my help. Wasn't it to appease me? He smirked, the action looking menacing even though he didn't necessarily mean it to be. I let you out often enough, cut me some slack. Naruto sniffed. Besides, I'd rather have you here working on other things that are more important. Kyuubi laughed. It was deep and throaty. It sounded wrong coming from Naruto, even if it wasn't actually him. You just like hearing the sound of your own voice, don't you, Kit? It's why you always come here to talk to me. You want to hear yourself. You want to know your voice isn't completely gone. If you'd healed me like you were meant to, you stupid parasite, I wouldn't have to come down here and bother you all the time. Naruto grumbled, crossing his tanned arms over his strong chest and looking away from the other person inhabiting his body. It's been a year. Kyuubi looked at Naruto as he whispered this. The blonde was looking at the floor, his eyes lowered and a sad expression marring his face. Kyuubi couldn't help but feel bad. He sighed as he leaned away from the bars, running one hand through his shockingly red hair. I'll fix it, Kit. It annoys me as much as it does you, because I can't voice myself while I'm in control, either. Naruto just nodded before turning his back on the fox-turned-human. Where are you going? To bed. I have to train Team 8 tomorrow. Those brats are annoying. Kyuubi growled. Is there no way I can just kill them? Naruto shot a look over his shoulder and Kyuubi just rolled his eyes before walking backwards. Next time, I better be let out, Kit. He called as he was swallowed by the darkness. You don't want me fighting against you, do you? The last thing Naruto saw was the fox's smirking face before he felt himself get wrenched backwards. What are you doing here, brat? Tsunade asked as she wrote something down, speaking to the boy before he even walked through the doors. To her, he was still the annoying little boy she'd met years ago, and no amount of growing or maturity was going to change her mind on the matter. He was like her son, and by God, he was going to stay that way. Naruto opened the doors before him, walking purposefully into the room. He was wearing a standard Junin uniform today as opposed to his Anbu one. She knew why. He wasn't on duty, nor did she have any pressing missions for him. Aren't you supposed to be training your genin team? The blonde woman asked as she put her pen down and leaned back in her chair, steepling her fingers against each other as she regarded the boy before her. All she received for her efforts was a pink tongue sticking out from between pouting lips. She cocked an eyebrow. With a defeated sigh, the Anbu captain began to sign to the Hokage. Nay, Tsunade Bakken, my team wants a mission. They said they won't train until you give them one, and I'm too tired to argue with them. So instead, you come to argue with me? She narrowed her eyes. When did 12-year-olds become more fearsome than the great Hokage? Naruto snickered at this. I'm sorry, great what? For a second there, I thought you were talking about yourself, but that can't be right. Brat. Tsunade threw the closest scroll she had at his head, the blonde catching it easily before beginning to open it. That's not for your genin team. The blonde boy grinned, as if telling Tsunade that her throwing it at his head seemed to suggest otherwise. Tsunade hated it when he got like this. The bastard was too cheeky for his own good. I'll give you a mission for your team. She sighed, shaking her head. Naruto began to hand the scroll back, but she waved her hand at him. It was for you, anyway. It's a mission for tomorrow. You and your Anbu squad are to head to Stone and rid them of sound spies that have begun to assassinate various important people. The Stone shinobi aren't enough to overcome them. Naruto nodded, his face seeming years older as he reverted into Anbu captain mode. Tsunade sighed, half loving and half hating it when he was like this. In some ways, it proved the boy had grown up, while in others, it showed her that he was no longer the boy she'd loved to tease. Too many horrible things had happened to Naruto. She was lucky he'd retained even a spark of his old self. A spark that was rapidly being extinguished. Neji went to talk to the Mizukage about our mission to Sound. Similarly, Kakashi has gone to speak with the Case Cage, and Shikamaru is on a recon mission. Naruto cocked an eyebrow before tucking the scroll safely away and signing to the Hokage. Am I to carry out this mission alone? No, I want you to go with your squad. They're all gone, which is why I want this mission to commence tomorrow. Kakashi and Neji should be back by then, and Shikamaru is said to be on his way back as we speak. You will leave tomorrow. Make sure you review the scroll's details and relay them to your team. Naruto nodded. And Brat? He cocked his head to the side, regarding the Hokage. Don't let Kyuubi out. The blonde sighed at this before his hands flew into motion, explaining to the Hokage that he couldn't do that. Why not? She inquired, frowning. He's upset I haven't let him out for a while. He said he would fight me for control if I didn't let him out on my next mission, and I don't feel like breaking down screaming while we're fighting off sound nens, if it's all the same to you. Sighing and shaking her head, the Hokage realized they had no choice. The only reason Kyuubi had stopped trying to take over Naruto's body was because the blonde had developed a seal that allowed him to give control of his body to the fox for a short period of time. It was always during missions, which appeased the caged fox because it allowed him to vent off his anger and frustration by killing off enemies. Naruto was always in control of when Kyuubi would return to his cage, but he tried not to force him back in. Only if Kyuubi crossed the line did Naruto pull the fox back into the far recesses of his mind. Fine, the fox can be let out. She sighed, rubbing her face with both hands. She felt much, much older than she looked, and it was starting to wear her out. Make sure he knows the mission. The blonde nodded before Tsunade held out a D-rank mission for his genin team. Smiling to the Hokage, he turned to exit the room, reaching the door in 3 steps. Naruto? The blonde turned, his hand on the doorknob. This mission you're going on tomorrow, there's a possibility you'll run into Sasuke. She saw the Kyuubi vessel wince, but he showed no other sign of discomfort, so she continued, I can't ask you to kill him, but please promise me that if it comes down to you or him, you'll choose yourself. She regarded the boy who was like a son to her and waited for confirmation. Naruto smiled at her, his usual brilliant smile that everyone who knew him could tell didn't reach his eyes. I'll be fine, he signed to her. Then, he turned and exited the room. Tsunade sighed, shaking her head. You didn't answer me, brat. She whispered. I better not lose you to Uchiha. But sensei. Niku whined. This is boring. The blonde sensei just smiled at his student, giving him a, you wanted a mission. You got one, look that the younger boy knew only too well. Baka. Hankusha muttered under his breath. Teme. Niku shot back. Naruto smiled, despite feeling a pang of intense pain in his chest. The bickering between Hankusha and Niku reminded him so much of the bickering between himself and Sasuke. It would always start the same. Sasuke would call him Dobi, and he'd reply with Teme. It would escalate until blows were thrown and the two of them lay panting and sweaty in the training grounds, neither one of them wanting to admit defeat, but knowing they didn't have the energy to continue. Naruto missed those spars with Sasuke, and he always smiled sadly when he thought of the last fight he and the other shinobi had ever had. It had been about 2 years ago. It was because of Naruto that Orochimaru hadn't been able to transfer to Sasuke's body back then. The two of them had met up while he was on his way back to Orochimaru, and they'd fought. Sasuke and Naruto had fought for close to 8 hours before Naruto had finally defeated Sasuke. But then, luck hadn't been on his side. The current Sound 4 had appeared and battled with the blonde, and while this was happening, Kabuto had appeared, whisking Sasuke away. Naruto had killed the Sound 4 and almost died, he'd been so exhausted. He passed out and woke up with Sasuke hovering above him. And once again, he'd been left alive. The stupid Uchiha had summoned a damn snake that brought Naruto back to Konoha. But then, the fight had cost Sasuke a heavy price. Orochimaru hadn't switched into his desired body, and so he'd stopped teaching Sasuke jutsus for close to 4 months until the Raven threatened to return to Konoha. Naruto still wished Sasuke had gone through with that threat, but the stupid snake bastard had started teaching him again. Naruto only knew all this because an Anbu had been sent out to find out what was happening in Sound. That Anbu had been him. Naruto still found it hard to believe he was an ANBU, let alone an Anbu captain. Heck, he outranked Kakashi, for crying out loud. Although, he had to admit, he knew why. When Kakashi had rejoined the Anbu the same year Naruto had been accepted into it, Kakashi had asked to be placed on the same team as Naruto. The second the blonde gained his captain rank, Kakashi requested to be placed under him. Tsunade had complied, if only to appease the man. Everyone knew that there were only a select few who worried all the time about Naruto, and Kakashi was one of them. Being on dangerous missions with him, especially when Kyuubi was let out to play, made everyone feel better, because Kakashi knew what to do. Kakashi knew how to control and read the blonde when things got out of hand. "Nay, Naruto-sensei?" The blonde shook himself from his thoughts, looking down at Niku. "Why does Sakura-chan have such a large forehead?" he asked with a frown. Naruto chuckled slightly as he looked down at Niku, wondering where this sudden thought had come from, when a small rock hit him in the forehead, a sharp end jabbing into his skin, causing blood to trickle down from his wound. "Monster!" A girl no older than 4 or 5 exclaimed. "Hey!" Niku hollered angrily as he took a step forward, only to have Naruto put a hand on his shoulder to hold him back. "Don't call my sensei that, or I'll beat you." The girl stuck her tongue out at him before turning and running away. Naruto wrapped one arm around Niku's neck and the other around his stomach to hold the furious boy back. "Let me go, sensei. I'll beat her. I'll kill her. No one calls you a monster and gets away with it." Naruto sighed, shaking his head. He turned to look at Hankusha and Yurusu, but frowned when he noticed they were gone. He was losing his touch. First the rock hitting him, now this? He looked forward again to see if he could spot them, still holding Niku, and noticed Yurusu dragging the girl who'd thrown the rock at him. She was crying and tugging at her wrist, which was being held by the irate Raven. Hankusha was trailing behind them, looking around with his arms crossed, as if making sure no one was going to stop them. Yurusu stopped in front of Naruto, forcing the girl to stay where she was as well. The girl was crying desperately, and Naruto suspected she was terrified. "Let me go, sensei. Let me beat her," Niku insisted. Naruto let his student go, but lightly pushed him behind himself, bending down in front of the small, crying girl. The girl watched him fearfully, but he just smiled before opening his hand and holding it out for her to see. She frowned, tears still falling down her face. Naruto closed his hand, shook it slightly, and then opened it again. Inside was a small blue flower in full bloom. The girl's eyes widened as she stared at it, and then looked up into Naruto's eyes. Smiling, the demon vessel placed the flower in the girl's hair, patting her head sweetly before standing again. He motioned for Yurusu to let her go and, despite wanting to injure the girl, Yurusu obeyed. Hankusha, Niku and Yurusu watched with narrowed eyes as the girl ran away from them. Just as she was about to turn behind a house, She turned back to the group and smiled brilliantly at Naruto before disappearing around the house. Naruto smiled slightly before shoving his hands in his pockets and continuing down the street, the wound on his forehead already healed, as well as the one in his heart. Yo! Naruto looked up as he waited by the gates, glaring at his former sensei. Sorry I'm late. I was walking by a field and noticed a baby bird had fallen from its nest, so naturally, I had to take it home and care for it. Liar. Naruto signed simply, not even looking at Kakashi. The silver-haired man winced every time he received that particular sign. It hurt him not being able to hear Naruto holler the word at him the way he and Sakura always used to back in the old days. If we are all here, we had best leave, Hyuga Neji stated as he uncrossed his arms and secured his Anbu mask. The other three did the same and were just about to depart when a fifth figure joined them, plopping easily in the center of the circle. You can't come, Kakashi said simply. I have permission, the new figure stated coldly. Honestly, Kakashi-sensei, did you think I would merely show up without permission? I'm not you. Sakura adjusted her Anbu mask more comfortably. I requested to escort all of you on this mission in case my medical experience was needed. Kakashi knew the real reason. There was a possibility that they would see Sasuke, and Sakura wanted to make sure she was there to save Naruto from any life-threatening wounds. The pink-haired girl had given up on the Raven long ago, and now only ever put up with any conversation about him because she knew Naruto still believed he would come back. Naruto was naive. Sasuke wasn't coming back. Without a word, the five of them made for the trees, flying through them quickly in the early morning light. They paused to rest only twice during their long journey, and reached Stone only 2 hours after sunset. They were immediately led to the Tsuchikage upon their arrival, and the old man was thrilled to see them. I am grateful the Hokage has deemed my request important enough to send 5 of her finest. The Tsuchikage said, bowing slightly. The 5 Anbu bowed in return before Naruto stood at the front of him team. Using a more advanced form of talking to people. He used this during missions because it was faster. Naruto concentrated on forming a chakra link with the Tsuchikage, as well as his comrades, and words floated before the man's eyes, speaking through chakra what Naruto could not speak with his voice. We were requested to rid the village of sound spies, and we demand to know what has happened thus far. Leave nothing out, for if we find you are secretly in alliance with the sound, there shall be dire consequences. We request the knowledge of how you were informed of these spies, who they are, and what their initial purpose is. Should you fail to comply, we shall not be of assistance to you and will depart immediately for Konoha. The Tsuchikage's eyebrows disappeared into his hairline. Never in his whole life had he been spoken to in such a manner, and he wondered where Naruto had found the courage to speak so rudely to a cage. Kami-sama, the Tsuchikage exclaimed before addressing Naruto's teammates. Does he treat his own cage in this manner? Yeah, Kakashi replied easily. Kind of worse, actually. Shikamaru insisted in his bored tone. Actually, he's worse with Gaara 'cause they're such close friends. Kakashi shot back. True. Consider yourself lucky, he's being pretty tame. The Tsuchikage doubted this, but said nothing nevertheless. They spent the next 20 minutes being informed of their situation with the sound spies until the Tsuchikage dismissed them and sent them on their way. The second they'd exited his tower, all 4 turned to Shikamaru. He's lying, he informed the team, a frown on his face. You think he's allied with sound? Sakura inquired as they walked through the village, looking around to ensure they didn't miss anything. Either that, or he's got something to hide. The lazy nin replied, his hands in his pockets. You think he might be considering attacking Konoha? Kakashi inquired. Perhaps, but there's no way of telling. Whether the sound spies are a threat to them or not, something is wrong here. What do you suggest, Captain? All of them turned to their captain, who contemplated everything quietly, his eyebrows down in a frown. After a few minutes, he nodded to himself before alerting his team. We'll go along as planned, but keep a sharp eye for anything out of the usual. I'm assuming they haven't allied with sound, but they are against Konoha. They'll probably have us attack and kill the spies, and then turn around and attack us before waging war on Konoha. I agree. Neji concurred. This all seems too coincidental. So, first we deal with the sound. Kakashi said. We'll focus on the rest when it comes time for that. The 5 Anbu nodded to one another before leaping up onto the closest rooftops and disappearing through the town, headed for the outskirts where the sound spies were said to be. So? Kakashi inquired as he replaced his katana, glancing at Shikamaru. They aren't allied, which means what we were suggesting earlier is the case. The other nin put his own katana away after having wiped the blood off it. We should keep a lookout. They'll be coming for us soon. Agreed, Neji said, his arms crossed. The 5 Anbu made their way through the dense surroundings, walking slowly through the trees and staying on alert, their masks tied to their belts. They were going to kill these opponents, without a doubt, and they knew this, so they had no reason to cover their faces. And they didn't want to limit their sights since this was going to be harder than any other battle. They would probably be confronted by hunter nins of the stone. Or be overwhelmed by numbers. Sakura glanced over at Naruto as she noticed his hands moving and saw him perform a familiar seal. Within seconds, the Naruto she knew was there no more. Where the blonde Anbu captain had stood now was a redhead. His eyes were as vibrantly red as his hair, and his canines had elongated into fangs. His nails lengthened to form claws, and the whisker marks on his cheeks, which had been almost invisible before, were now more pronounced than ever. Kyuubi turned to Sakura and grinned at her, but the pink-haired girl turned away, hating that grin on her best friend's face. It wasn't Naruto. Stay alert, humans. Sakura turned back to Kyuubi as he scanned the area, bloodlust in his eyes. Here they come. Like rapid fire, the other 4 Anbu stood ready, their katanas poised and their senses sharp. Kyuubi just clenched his fists, his katana still secured on his back. All listened intently, hearing nothing but their own partner's slow, even breathing. And then, their first alert to trouble appeared in the form on a branch snapping. One of their ninja wasn't very skilled. He'd probably be the first to die. Quickly, Kakashi whirled on the spot and blocked another katana with his own, staring into the covered face of a stone Anbu. The two pushed away from each other, leaping back to gain some distance. How long have you been planning to attack Konoha? Neji asked calmly, not having moved from his position. He could see all around him, having activated his Byakugan. He knew exactly how many enemies there were, and where they were all located. For the moment, no one was in immediate danger. Well, the Hyuga smirked to himself, we're in no danger, but with Kyuubi out and looking for blood, the stone nins are going to wish they'd stayed home today. We are displeased with the amount of power Konoha currently has. One of the opposing Anbu stated. It is too powerful, and we wish to minimize that power. By killing Anbu? Sakura demanded, narrowing her eyes. By killing the best, the other said, a smirk evident in his voice. I must admit, at first, I didn't see how you were the best. Led by a mute captain with the inability to communicate with his team when necessary. But now, I realize my mistake. At least you're all smart. Neji couldn't help but let a smirk slip past his mask. Naruto was anything but unable to communicate with his team. In fact, Kyuubi, who was still technically their captain, was communicating with his team the entire time the other had been talking. The stone just didn't know it. As the stone Anbu before them began to continue, the Konoha shinobi made their move. Neji pulled out 8 kunai and threw them through the trees around them, making each one land spot on around the hidden stone Anbu. None of them could be hit because they were hiding behind trees, but that wasn't the purpose of these kunai. They had their own special purpose, and Neji was in charge of them because he had the Byakugan. Inscribed on each and every kunai he'd just thrown was a seal. One only Naruto, and thus, his demon, could use. Hiraishin no Jutsu, 1. Go, Kyuubi, Neji hollered. The red-headed Anbu no one had remembered being there when the team had arrived disappeared in a flicker before appearing beside one of the hidden Anbu. He barely had time to open his mouth to attempt a scream before his throat was brutally ripped out, chunks of flesh hanging from Kyuubi's mouth. Great. Lovely. Thanks. I'll be spitting blood and flesh out of my mouth for, don't you fucking swallow you disgusting parasite. Naruto hollered from the far recesses of his mind. Calm down, Kit. I'm not going to swallow it. I don't know where this human's flesh has been. Whatever, hurry up. Kill the others before they realize what you've done. Kyuubi did as Naruto asked, jumping quickly from one enemy to the other, killing them before they even had the chance to realize what was happening. Once they were all dead, he returned to the center where his team was, all of them engaged in battle. Kyuubi sniffed the air and bared his teeth angrily. More were on the way, and the team was already busy. He shrugged. Oh well, more for me, he smirked to himself. Kit, Have you been working on perfecting that jutsu you made up last year? Somewhat. The fox scoffed before positioning himself accordingly, facing the direction the oncoming enemy were. He clapped both hands together before pulling his hands apart slowly. Two whip hilts emerged from either hand, both created by chakra. The fox separated his hands, lengthening the whips, and finally grabbed the hilts when the chakra whips were long enough. 2. He smirked at the red chakra in his hands, proud of the fact that his kid had come up with this jutsu. It wasn't as powerful as Rasengan or Chidori, but it had its own benefits. Like long-range fighting, which neither Rasengan or Chidori could do. Are you paying attention, Kit? Always making fun of me, huh, Kyuubi-ji-san? The blonde muttered, annoyed. Kyuubi had been able to master this jutsu, but it was mostly due to the fact that his chakra control was much better than Naruto's. The blonde could form the whips, but he found he spent more time focusing on maintaining them than he did on actually fighting with them. Kyuubi waited for his prey to arrive when a scent hit his nose. Sniffing, he turned and narrowed his eyes. Shikamaru had just been injured. Damn genius, can't he stay out of trouble? Kyuubi thought, annoyed. Always the first to get hurt during missions. Quickly, Kyuubi lashed out with one chakra whip, killing one of the 3 stone Anbu around Shikamaru instantly. The pony-tailed Anbu was grateful, but he'd never say it out loud. They didn't need Kyuubi to get even more arrogant than he already was. Looking around, he realized everyone on his team was being pushed in different directions, all of them getting separated so it would be easier to finish them off. Shikamaru cursed under his breath as he dodged another attack, not wanting their group separated. We're getting split up, and it doesn't look like we can do anything about it. How troublesome, the Anbu thought with a scowl. The 5 Konoha shinobi fought hard, only using about half of their real strength most of the time, and keeping their true strengths as their trump card, should the need come for them to use it. Within 20 minutes, they'd succeeded in killing all their enemies, but they were also all split up. Sakura panted as she wiped the back of her hand across her mouth, grimacing as she brushed against a cut, blood coming away on her gloved hand. She sighed, shaking her hand out and replaced her katana. She couldn't sense any more danger. The only girl Anbu on the team turned in a circle with a sigh, trying to sense the other's chakra as she focused healing chakra into her hands and set about healing all of her wounds. Most of them were small, but she still hated having injuries. As she headed in a certain direction, having sensed Kakashi's chakra, she let out a scream before she could stop herself and fell on her back, a heavy weight resting over her. Naruto was straddling her, a huge grin on his face, his eyes and hair red, and his whisker marks more pronounced. Sakura sighed, knowing what this meant. Kyuubi hadn't returned to his cage yet. Hello, Kyuubi. The fox's smile widened, as if it were even possible, but he managed to do so nevertheless, and leaned down to nuzzle her cheek. Get off me. Sakura pushed at him with both hands against his chest, but he wouldn't budge. Not that she'd expected him to, honestly. Sighing, she let her hands fall back to her side as Kyuubi started kissing her neck. You know what Naruto said if you didn't listen to me. He'll pull you back in and not let you out for a month. Kyuubi leaned back, glaring down at Sakura. I mean it, fox. Get off. Sakura was sure the fox would have been grumbling, had he had a voice, but since he couldn't, he just settled with looking angry, red chakras swirling around him in a chaotic manner as he got off her. Sakura stood, dusting herself off before wincing as she held one hand over her right upper arm. Forcing healing chakra into the new wound Kyuubi had accidentally caused, it closed easily and she pulled her hand away, regarding the redhead before her. He was off leaning against a tree, his arms crossed and an annoyed scowl on his face. Sakura hated it when Kyuubi was in control of Naruto. The fox made faces the blonde had never even imagined making, and it hurt Sakura knowing that it wasn't Naruto. Knowing he had no choice but to share his body with the fox or else the demon would try to break free. It wasn't fair. It's time to head home. Sakura stated as she walked past Kyuubi. You're no longer needed. The fox shot her a scathing look, but he knew Naruto had only stopped from wrenching him back into his cage out of pure self-control. The blonde hated Kyuubi being in control of his body as much as other people hated seeing the fox in control. With a sigh, the fox's hands flew through a seal. As usual when it was a change between Kyuubi and Naruto, the blonde slumped against the tree behind him, breathing hard as his eyes turned blue, his hair blonde, and his whisker marks disappeared as if they'd never been there. Sakura walked up to him and wrapped one arm around his waist, offering to help him walk. He smiled gratefully as he draped his own arm around her shoulders and the two began walking. They stumbled slightly when Naruto lost his balance, but Sakura caught him and righted herself quickly before they had the chance to fall over. "You have to stop giving him so much control," Sakura muttered. "Every time you give him too much, it hits you hard when you come back." The blonde merely shrugged, which caused Sakura to shake her head. Sometimes she thought Naruto just wanted to die or something. He didn't take care of himself as much as he used to. Heck, he'd started sleeping with his door unlocked the same day he'd been brutally attacked 3 years ago. Kakashi had found him passed out, covered in blood in the forest around the training grounds. Kyuubi had healed all of his wounds, but it had taken Kakashi 20 minutes to wash all the blood off, and almost an hour for Naruto to wake up. The blonde had shrugged, laughed, and rubbed the back of his head while talking about being careless. Now, Naruto was most vulnerable when he and Kyuubi switched. When Kyuubi took control, he wasn't affected in the least, acting as if he'd just blinked or something. When Naruto regained control after Kyuubi, he lost his balance for a while and he found it hard to focus and walk. When no one was there to help him, Naruto was vulnerable because anyone could attack and he wouldn't have enough time to either defend himself or call Kyuubi forth again. Sakura hated it. "Are you injured?" Sakura let out a shriek and whirled around, Naruto stumbling and almost falling from the suddenness of the movement. Neji cocked an inquisitive eyebrow at her shriek, but figured it was just the way Sakura was. She was an amazing fighter, and incredibly stealthy, but once a battle was over and she was on edge, she lost her focus altogether and turned back into the same girl she'd been back when she was 12. "Neji, yeah, we're fine," she said, taking a deep breath to calm her erratically beating heart. Neji looked at Naruto and surveyed him. The blonde gave him a grin and a thumbs up, despite putting most of his weight on Sakura. The Hyuga activated his Byakugan and surveyed his captain's chakra pathways, frowning at what he saw. "Did you allow Kyuubi more control than usual?" the Anbu inquired as he deactivated his bloodline limit. "Maybe," the blonde signed, struggling to do so with one hand around Sakura's shoulders. "Your pathways were almost completely devoid of your chakra. They're struggling to replenish themselves now." "Naruto." The pink-haired girl clocked her best friend over the head and the blonde hissed, pouting at the two Anbu around him. "Is everyone all right?" Kakashi inquired as he appeared through the trees, Shikamaru trudging lazily behind him, his hands in his pockets. "We're fine, but someone overexerted himself." Sakura glared at Naruto. The blonde's head suddenly shot up, and his eyes narrowed. Before the others could ask what was wrong, he pulled away from Sakura and performed the seal again, giving control back to Kyuubi. "What the hell?" Sakura hollered angrily as she stared into blood-red eyes. "More are coming. They aren't far." "How many?" Shikamaru inquired. "At least 50. Mendokus," Shikamaru muttered, rubbing the back of his head. "No way for us to outrun them?" "No," Neji stated, the chakra pathways around his eyes visible as Byakugan reactivated. "They'll be arriving in approximately 20 seconds. No time to run." "Fantastic," Kakashi muttered. "Well, let's get this over with so we can go home. Kyuubi, you got our backs?" He turned to the redhead. The fox inside Naruto's body grinned evilly, giving Naruto's face a look that scared even his teammates. "Always." Tsunade adjusted the pile of reports on her desk before folding her hands together and looking at the team before her. "So, how did it go?" She was greeted with 5 simultaneous glares. Each of the 5 Anbu before her was covered in their blood, from already healed wounds, as well as others' blood and dirt. Sakura had twigs and leaves in her hair and Kakashi had a layer of mud caked across his back. Tsunade cleared her throat, looking back at her pile of reports and straightening them again to avoid eye contact with the angry Anbu before her. The only one who looked relatively clean was Naruto. Of course, he was also the only one to be brought back unconscious, having lost consciousness after Kyuubi had retreated to his cage. Tsunade was getting worried. More and more now, Naruto's reaction to the transfer was getting worse. She feared that eventually, the transfer would just kill Naruto and leave Kyuubi in charge of his body. She wanted to tell the blonde to stop switching with the fox, but she knew he wouldn't listen. It was willingly give control to Kyuubi during battles, or have it forcefully taken any time the fox wished. So, what happened? We killed the sound spies, but we discovered Stone was secretly plotting against Konoha. Tsunade's eyebrows went up at Shikamaru's words. We also heard that there's a group of Stone Anbu headed for Sand as we speak to attack them. The case cage must be warned. Shizune, the petite brunette, appeared beside Tsunade, having been standing slightly behind her chair during the discussion. Send our fastest messenger to Sand. Inform the case cage of Stone's betrayal. We're going to have to assume they'll ally with Sound in the near future. Hi, Hokage-sama. Shizune disappeared from the room. Anything else? Tsunade inquired, folding her hands together and resting her mouth against them. Kakashi, Shikamaru, Sakura and Naruto shook their heads, but Neji remained thoughtful. Neji? The Hyuga looked at her and sighed. Hokage-sama, I would like to discuss a possible chakra depletion in Naruto's system. Immediately, the blonde hit Neji across the arm, scowling angrily before crossing his arms. Tsunade frowned at this action, knowing this couldn't be good. Naruto always did try to hide his more life-threatening problems from her. What is it? The Hokage demanded. It's nothing, Tsunade Bakken. Naruto insisted. Neji's just worried because I passed out, that's all. Do not lie to the Hokage. Neji growled. We all know something's wrong with you, Naruto. Shikamaru stated lazily, inspecting his katana. There's no point in trying to hide it. Were you also aware of Naruto's situation? Tsunade asked Shikamaru with narrowed eyes. I was. Then why did you not say you had more to tell me? She barked out. Because I knew Neji would. Besides, if he didn't, I would have stayed behind to tell you so Naruto wouldn't know it was me. The lazy Anbu shrugged. No point in getting harassed by Naruto just because I care. So, talk. Tsunade ordered. Neji spent the next 20 minutes explaining in as much detail as possible everything he saw. Naruto then spent 3 hours with Tsunade while she looked him over and tried to determine what happened to his chakra when he wasn't in control. By the time he left, his stomach was growling from hunger, he was still covered in mud and blood, and he had a weird itch at the back of his eyeballs that suggested he needed a lot of sleep. When he got outside, Sakura was waiting for him so they could head over to Ichiraku. Once there, Tucci and Ayame gave their favorite customer ramen on the house once they saw how tired, beat up, and muddy he looked. Sakura and Naruto spent an hour there, chatting about their mission and about the one coming up. Sakura informed him that Kankuro and Tamari were meant to be coming into town the next day, but with the recent development of Stone, they probably wouldn't come. Yikes, is that the time? Sakura suddenly asked out of nowhere, making a face. Damn, I have to go on an early patrol with Demike. How is old Persona Demike doing? Naruto signed. Sakura scoffed, abusing her new elite Anbu status. Did you know she summons Kimen whenever she feels like it? A tree branch moves in the wind and she screams danger, and next thing I know, I've got a huge, white tiger bearing down on me. The pink-haired girl threw money on the counter, smiling at Tucci and Ayame before she and Naruto left the small ramen stand. I need to head home, too, anyway. Have a safe walk home. He signed to her. She smiled and hugged him. You, too. I'd stay with you, but I don't want you waking up early because of me. She pulled away and waved at him. I'll see you for dinner tomorrow. Naruto waved at Sakura as he headed down the street, shoving his hands in the pockets of his filthy Anbu pants. He tilted his head slightly to the side, as if listening to something nobody but him could hear, before straightening it again, continuing on his way. Behind him, 2 Junins hid in the shadows, watching him leave. That's him, the Hokage's precious little pet. One of the Junin spat bitterly. He's a monster. The other agreed. How the 9 tails can become an Anbu is beyond me. He shouldn't have gotten a Hite 8 in the first place. Come on, just like we planned. The 2 of them disappeared in a puff of smoke. Naruto calmly walked down the street before turning down an alleyway to head through a shortcut. He hated taking the long way around, it always took so much longer, and he had to train Hankusha, Niku and Yurusu the next day. He let out a sigh, shaking his head. Training those 3 was so tiresome sometimes. Naruto suddenly flew off his feet as shuriken pelted his back. He slid along the ground and let out an inaudible groan as he raised himself on his hands and knees. Someone stomping on his back forced him back down. Why's trash like you trying to bother leaving the alleyway? A Junin smirked. Trash belongs here. Naruto turned his head to look at the two Junin behind him, and then shook it. The Junin frowned and jumped back startled as Naruto suddenly disappeared in a puff of smoke. It was a Kage Bunshin. What? Looking up, they noticed Naruto at the opposite end of the alleyway, his hands in his pockets, watching them leisurely. They both tensed as he surveyed them before the mute Anbu captain turned on his heel and started walking away. Haruno Sakura stretched as she walked down the street, having just gotten off her patrol duty. She glanced at the time, deciding it was late enough for Naruto to be awake, but early enough for him not to have gone to train his genin team yet. She turned and headed in the direction of his apartment, being sure to pass in front of the training grounds. She looked and noticed the memorial stone sitting peacefully by itself. No Kakashi, and no Naruto. The blonde had started standing in front of the stone as often as Kakashi, staring at the names engraved on the sleek black surface. He probably knew them all by heart by now, but the reason he did it wasn't to learn who had died for their village. Sakura knew why he always stood there. It was because he felt another name should be added. Sasuke's. Not because he was dead, but because before he'd left the village, he had been somewhat of a hero. Not being here is the same as being dead, right? Naruto had once asked her, a few months after Sasuke had left. Before the blonde had gone off with Jiraiya. Sasuke's name should be on this. He shouldn't be forever known as a traitor. He was a good guy, Teme just forgot who he was. Sakura smiled slightly as she thought of the blonde's words, walking down the street with her hands shoved deep into her pockets. She felt like ramen right now. Naruto was rubbing off on her, and she knew it. Besides, the blonde never turned down a chance to have his favorite meal. Which reminds me, the girl thought as she reached Naruto's apartment building. Iruka wants to meet Naruto for dinner tonight. Sakura climbed the stairs to Naruto's apartment, whistling a random tune as she headed for her best friend's door. The whistle stuck in her throat and her face distorted with rage as she stared at his door. Fuck, I'm going to kill these people if I ever find out who they are. She grumbled angrily under her breath. On Naruto's door were words carved deep in the wood, like almost every other day. Monster. Demon. Died demon bastard. We hate you. Sakura felt tears sting her eyes and she brushed them away angrily. She couldn't believe after everything he'd done for this village he was still treated like this. With a sigh, she forced chakra into her hand and focused on the jutsu Kawazuki Yamato had taught her years ago before he died at the hands of Orochimaru. No one could replicate his wood jutsu, the one he'd gotten from the first genes, but they could do something close enough. She was going to regrow the door so that the letters would disappear as if nothing had happened. Placing her hand on the door, she did just that, removing the words as if they'd never even been there. She jerked her hands away right as she finished when the door opened, Naruto about to leave his house, but pausing as he saw her. She smiled brightly, waving. Hey, Naruto. The blonde cocked an eyebrow before looking at his door. Sakura did the same and winced when she noticed she'd missed one. Naruto turned to her with a smile, shaking his head as he closed his door. It happens all the time, Sakura-chan, he signed to her. It's okay. Don't tell me it's okay, Uzumaki Naruto, she screamed angrily before turning on her heel and stomping down the corridor. How dare he say it was okay? It was not okay. He didn't deserve it. She was so furious she slammed straight into someone coming up the stairs, almost falling back on her ass, but the person grabbed her arm, steadying her. What happened this time, Sakura? The pink-haired girl recognized the voice before even looking up. Knock some sense into your little brother, will you? He keeps talking about how being called a demon is okay. Sakura brought her hands up to quote the word Naruto had used. Oi, Brad, you're not still acting as if everything is okay when we know it's not, are you? Sabaku no Tamari hollered as she stormed past Sakura, Kankuro releasing the ANBU's arm to follow his older sister. It's nothing, honest. It was just words carved into my door. Naruto insisted, signing frantically with fear in his eyes. He knew Tamari better than anyone, including her own siblings, and he did not want her wrath brought upon himself before he trained his team. He wouldn't be able to move. I don't give a shit. Who did this? I'll kick their asses. Tamari punched one hand into her other. Come on, point them out. I wish I knew. Sakura muttered, coming up beside Tamari and Kankuro, all three of them looking at Naruto. I'd have beat them up months ago. This has been going on for months? Kankuro asked, anger in his voice. It's fine, calm down. What about stone? I thought they were headed for sand. Naruto signed, trying to get them to forget about his door. We caught up with them before they reached sand and sent them home crying. And don't change the subject. Naruto shrank away from Temari as she said this. I have to go train my team. And I have to watch your back. Damn it, little brother. Temari stomped her foot angrily. I really have to go. I'll see you for dinner. The blonde signed as he passed them and then ran down the corridor, running away from the wrath of his older sister, who wasn't even his real sibling. He couldn't help a smile from forming on his face as he thought of Temari, Kankuro and Gaara. His surrogate siblings. Iruka was his surrogate dad. Tsunade was his surrogate grandmother. Sakura was his best friend. He felt like he had an actual family and actual friends. A smile formed on the blonde's lips as he ran down the stairs before teleporting to the training grounds. Kakashi walked calmly down the corridor, headed for a large conference room in the Hokage Tower. He was an hour late, but he figured everyone would have guessed he wouldn't be on time. He pushed through the doors and walked into the room, scanning the annoyed faces of the other Anbu, their masks off. Yo, damn it, Kakashi, this meeting started an hour ago. Sakura hollered, slamming her fist on the table before her. It cracked in two, causing people to let out annoyed cries. Sakura, Genma said warningly. Sorry, Genma Taisho. Sakura winced, sitting down again and looking at the broken table. The Hokage isn't even here. Kakashi took his seat beside his own captain. He saw the three best Anbu teams in all of Konoha were there. His own team, consisting of Neji, Shikamaru, and his captain, Naruto. Shiranui Genma's team, with Sakura, Persona Demike and Karagawa Takeshi. Lastly, there was Sai's team, which included Tamura Tenten, Kota Takako and Mimura Shinji. They were the best of the best. These were the three teams being sent to Sound to retrieve Sasuke. Should we alert the Hokage that we're all here? Demike inquired. TCH. No. Takeshi insisted, crossing his arms. She'll come when she's ready. If she's not drunk. Shinji snickered. Do not speak of our Hokage in such a manner. Neji narrowed his eyes, his arms crossed. She is a powerful woman. I never said she wasn't. Shinji smirked. I just said she was always drunk. It's true. Genma had to concur. If she hears you say that, she'll strip you of your Anbu status. Sakura said. She can hold quite the grudge. Nah. Shinji waved his hand at her, dismissing her warning. Takako would get me out of it. How so? Tenten frowned, confused, as she regarded the girl at the other end of the table. Takako just sighed and shook her head. No, you don't get it. Takako has a gift. She's awesome. She can get you out of anything, and since she's my best friend, she gets me out of everything. He nodded, grinning hugely. Oh yeah, Takako is my helpful helper who enjoys helping me help myself in helpful ways. You're an idiot, Shikamaru stated. The door opened before Shinji could reply and Tsunade walked in, Kankuro and Temari walking in behind her. Tsunade scanned the room, looking at Kakashi before moving on, did a double take, blinked, and then just stared. What? The copy nin asked, confused. You're here. It's a mission regarding Sasuke. I wasn't going to be 4 hours late. He replied. Of course. The Hokage took her seat, Temari and Kankuro sitting on either side of her. Tsunade then stared at the broken table before her before cocking an eyebrow and looking at Sakura. The other girl laughed nervously, rubbing her right upper arm. Tsunade merely shrugged before leaning back in her chair, steepling her fingers against each other. As you all know, this is a top priority mission involving the best Konoha has to offer. The Case Cage has offered his help, for which we are grateful. Temari and Kankuro will be listening to our debriefing before returning home to speak with the Case Cage. You shall all head out tomorrow to meet them in Sand, and then the two allied villages will head to Sound to take Sasuke back by force. Should you have the chance to kill Orochimaru, take it, but it is not our first priority. We are to retrieve Sasuke. Is this to be a covert operation, or can we rush in there as an army of sorts? Naruto asked via chakra, sitting back in his chair with his arms crossed. Demike jerked in her seat. Holy shit, what was that? Relax. It was Naruto's chakra communication. Sakura said with a sigh. That's right, it's your first time. Like a chakra virgin. Shinji grinned at her. Don't worry, I freaked out the first time, too. Wonderful. My question? As much as possible, we would like this to go unnoticed. Tsunade said. If it cannot be helped, then it cannot be helped. This is why we have sand helping us. Naruto, you and your team will go in to retrieve Sasuke. The blonde shot a glance at Sakura, who wasn't on his team. She didn't react, so he looked back at the Hokage. Should things start to go wrong, you can alert the other teams and sand, and backup shall come. If you can do it without alerting sound and extract Sasuke, retreat to sand. It is closer, and better guarded. We will send shinobi to escort him home, all of you coming along as well, obviously. Gaara requested Naruto stay. Temari cut in. He wants to spend some time with Naruto. It's up to him, Tsunade said with a nod in Temari's direction. After this mission, all of you will be on a month's leave. Naruto, you can stay in sand if you want. The rest of you will help escort Sasuke home, and then you will have your leave. Any questions? There were none. All right, the mission starts at dawn. We shall head home, Kankuro said as he and Temari stood. Thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for your help. Tsunade bowed her head slightly to them. They bowed back before heading for the door. Bye, little brother. Be careful. Temari called before leaving. Take care of yourself. Kankuro added before leaving as well, closing the door behind himself. The room was silent for a few seconds before Tsunade nodded, stood, and went to the door. Before exiting the room, she turned and looked first at Sakura, then Kakashi, and lastly Naruto. Good luck. And if it becomes a battle between you and Sasuke, everyone, choose yourself over him. She narrowed her eyes at Naruto as she said this. He is not valuable enough that I'd risk losing any of my finest. Yes, Hokage-sama, Kakashi said. Sakura nodded. Naruto just gave her his trademark grin, and the Hokage knew he wouldn't listen to her. If he and Sasuke fought, he would die before killing Sasuke. That was something she couldn't dissuade him of. Tomorrow, things in all of their lives were going to change. Uchiha Sasuke walked leisurely down the long corridor, watching the shadows dance off the walls as he passed. He found nothing better to do with his time now that he knew everything Orochimaru had to teach him. All he had left to do was find Itachi, and kill the bastard. Then, everything would be finished, and Sasuke could go back to. The Uchiha paused as he frowned. Go back to what? Once he killed Itachi, his body would be taken over. He'd have wasted his whole life destroying one man. He'd never done anything other than train to defeat Itachi, and once that was done, he wouldn't have the chance to experience anything because Orochimaru would be in his body. The Raven frowned at this thought, still displeased with the idea of someone else's consciousness in his body. He'd still be there, deep down inside, but he would never be in control. Almost like the Kyuubi and Naruto. Then again, the damn snake bastard kept going back on his word. He had promised Sasuke could dispose of Itachi before he took over Sasuke's body, yet 2 years ago, Orochimaru had been planning on doing just that when Sasuke wasn't nearly half as strong as he needed to be in order to defeat Itachi. He was not pleased with the Snake Man. Not in the slightest. The only thing that had saved him back then had been Naruto. The Raven sighed as his mind turned back to the blonde Dobi. It did that a lot lately, and it annoyed Sasuke to no end. The stupid Usura Tonkatsu shouldn't occupy as much of his mind as he did, and Sasuke wondered what it meant. He supposed he just missed his blonde teammate. And Kakashi, and Sakura. Yeah, he missed Team 7, but there was no going back now. Sasuke sighed, rubbing the back of his head, messing up his hair even more. He hadn't changed his rooster tail hairstyle in all the long years he'd been with Orochimaru, despite how much the Snake Master hated it. Sasuke liked it, because it reminded him of the life he used to have and could never return to. Sasuke-sama. The Uchiha turned as he heard his name and came face to face with Verity, one of the Sound 4, the new Sound 4. Naruto had killed the ones before this new team. What is it? He demanded impatiently, crossing his arms. Of the 4 Sound Nins Orochimaru could have sent with the message, it had to be the one who took her time talking to him in order to stare at him for as long as possible. Which was what she was doing right now, practically drooling. It's Orochimaru-sama, she said, looking Sasuke up and down with a grin. The Uchiha crossed his arms, waiting. What about him? He asked when she didn't continue. You know, he wants to see you. Verity smirked as she leaned against the wall, biting her bottom lip seductively. Why? Sasuke demanded, narrowing his eyes. The girl just shrugged. We have pressing matters to discuss and things to be dealt with. Without a word, the pale Uchiha walked past her, the girl following behind him with a pout as they headed for Orochimaru's chambers. Sasuke shivered as they neared the room, hating going into Orochimaru's private quarters. He still didn't understand how the man could violate a body he would soon be inhabiting. Sasuke himself just lay there and took it, knowing he couldn't push the other man away. Thankfully, Orochimaru had lost interest in him recently, and he hadn't been in the man's chambers for close to 2 months. He just hoped this was another debriefing. Sasuke and Verity entered the room, the Raven nodding to the remaining 3 of the Sound Four, Kazuma, Kaiza and Mitsuru. They nodded back respectfully, knowing Sasuke was the only person other than Orochimaru and Kabuto who deserved their utmost respect, as both their master's future body and as an Uchiha. Sasuke-kun. Orochimaru smiled at him and patted the seat beside him. Sasuke's eyebrow twitched but he obeyed nevertheless, taking a seat beside his sensei. As all of you may know, a war is approaching between Konoha and Sound. Orochimaru began, his hand not so discreetly landing on Sasuke's upper thigh. The Raven did his best to ignore it. Konoha is foolish if they believe they can crush Sound, Orochimaru-sama. Kaiza insisted with utmost respect. I believe this as well, but I have heard they are going to have the Kyuubi no Kitsune with them. Sasuke tensed, but kept his face impassive. God, he wanted to see Naruto again, but if he did, the blonde would probably die. No, it was better if he never saw Naruto again. Ever. I want the power of the nine-tailed fox. Orochimaru stated. I want you to capture the vessel of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, and anyone else within the traveling shinobi who could be of use to us. Hitaki Kakashi, Haruno Sakura, Hyuga Neji and Baiken Sai are said to be with the demon vessel. Kabuto informed them, more than any of the others, will be of use to us. Where are they now? Mitsuru asked as he crossed his arms, leaning back against the closest wall. They are headed for Sand. Orochimaru replied. Undoubtedly, the two have formed an alliance, and the village of the Sand will be aiding Konoha in the destruction of Sound. We shall never let that happen, Orochimaru-sama. Kazuma insisted. Orochimaru smiled, absent-mindedly drawing circles on Sasuke's inner thigh. The Raven kept his face neutral, despite being revolted by the other man's touch. This mission is to take place immediately. I want the Kyuubi no Kitsune. The Sound Four nodded and Orochimaru turned to Sasuke, his hand leaving the boy's thigh only to cup his cheek in a loving manner, gazing into red Sharingan eyes. I shall allow you to play with your pet, Sasuke-kun. Do with him what you will, but then, he is mine. Sasuke merely nodded before he stood, motioning for the Sound Four to follow him. They all left the room to go and complete their mission. Naruto looked around, feeling unease in his gut. He'd traveled this road to Sand hundreds, if not thousands, of times, and never once did he feel as threatened as he currently felt. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. He sent a burst of chakra to Kakashi, who was closest to him, and the masked man turned to look at him, Naruto signing to him quickly. I'm going to give Kyuubi control. I need to talk to him. Kakashi merely nodded, knowing how this worked. When Naruto was in control, he had to fall unconscious or force himself into the depths of his mind with a jutsu in order to interact with the fox. When the fox was in control, he and Naruto could talk freely in their minds. Be careful. Don't let him out for too long. Naruto nodded before performing the seal and closing his eyes. The change was instantaneous, blonde hair turning red, whisker marks becoming more pronounced, fangs replacing teeth, claws replacing nails. And when he opened his eyes, the normal clear sky blue was gone, replaced with a vivid red. You feel it, too, don't you, Kit? The Kyuubi asked his host as he looked around, his red eyes narrowed. I feel something is amiss. I feel it, too. Naruto agreed from the recesses of his mind. Something is wrong, but I can't put my finger on what exactly it is. My blood boils at the feeling which approaches. It is familiar and strong. Naruto was silent for a long moment. Both he and Kyuubi knew what this meant, but the fox wasn't going to push Naruto to say it. The boy would voice his fears in his own time. 10 seconds later, and Naruto finally did. Sasuke, I believe he has come to find our group, Kit. We must warn the others. We must move quickly. Once we have reached Sand, everything should be fine. Thanks, Kyuubi-ji-san. Naruto called the fox back to his cage. The blonde stumbled as he regained control of his body, Kakashi catching him around the waist to keep him balanced until the man was under control again. Kyuubi and I sense something foul is coming. We must hurry to sand. Naruto signed hurriedly as he began walking faster, getting to the front of the group and walking at a speedier pace, causing everyone to follow his pace or risk being left behind. Naruto looked around calmly, trying not to worry his team, but silently calculating the distance between Sasuke and them. The result he found wasn't encouraging. At this pace, they wouldn't make it to sand in time. He turned to his team, quickly signing that they had to move fast. They all began running, making their way quickly across the sand. Naruto cursed the fact that the sand was slowing them down. The same should have been the case for the sound nins, but from what he could tell, they were still gaining on them. Much too quickly. Shit, we're not gonna make it, Naruto thought worriedly. Kid. The fact that Kyuubi had managed to speak to him proved the severity of the situation. Without even breaking his stride, Naruto flipped in the air, 5 kunai flying by beneath him. His team stopped as Naruto slid on the sand in a crouch, standing quickly and pulling out a kunai. Everyone on the defensive. We've got sound nins. He noticed Kakashi and Sakura tensing as wave after wave of chakra poured onto them. They'd obviously just sensed Sasuke. This fight was going to turn ugly very, very fast. Demike, summon Kimen, Genma ordered. The brunette didn't hesitate, biting her thumb and doing a seal before slamming her hand into the sand. Kachiyose no jutsu. In a puff of smoke, a large, white Siberian tiger appeared. We've been ambushed by sound. Tell the case cage, now. The tiger was gone in the next second, nothing but a blur in the distance. Everyone stood on alert, wondering why no one had been attacked yet. Not to mention they could see no one around them for what seemed like miles. Naruto narrowed his eyes, waiting. They were close. Any second now. They appeared quickly, without a sound, without even the slightest warning. There were at least 50 of them versus the 12 Anbu. The Konoha shinobi weren't too concerned, they were the best of their village. But then again, the sound nins had Sasuke, and from the looks of it, a new sound 4, too. Well. One of the sound 4 grinned. Look what we've caught in our net. You are all S-class Nukanen, 1. Neji said loudly in his usual authoritative tone. If you surrender now and come to sand, your punishment for your treasonous acts will be diminished considerably. Listen to this guy. The only girl of the sound 4 giggled. I don't think you're in any position to make demands. I don't think you know who you're messing with. Shinji shot back, hand wrapped around the hilts of his sei, too. He preferred them to a kunai. Sure we do. Another one of the sound 4 insisted. You're all Anbu. The elite of the elite. And who are you? Genma asked, narrowing his eyes. Naruto shot a look at his team as he waited for a reply. They all looked ready to fight, and Shikamaru had his eyes closed with his hands together, obviously trying to think up a strategy. If they weren't in the middle of the damn desert, he'd probably have an easier time, since he'd have to take all the sand into consideration. Naruto almost wished they were all wearing their Anbu gear, complete with katanas. In their Junin uniforms, all the Anbu present were limited to what they had. Kunai and shuriken ran out fast. Katanas never left your side. Who are we? We're the sound 4. Names would be appreciated. Sakura stated dryly. Why give your name to those about to die? One of them asked, grinning widely. So that we may know what names to carve on your tombstones. Neji stated calmly. I like that one. The girl smirked, motioning Neji. I want to torture him. Neji narrowed his eyes. I am Kaiza, keeper of the West Gate. One of the men started. I am Verity, keeper of the East Gate. The only girl said. I am Kazuma, keeper of the South Gate. I am Mitsuru, keeper of the North Gate. Without another word, they attacked. Naruto vaguely noticed one of the sound 4, Kaiza, if he remembered correctly, had turned invisible. Trusting his senses to alert him if the cowardly bastard came near him, Naruto flipped over an attacker, throwing 2 kunai as he landed. One lodged itself in the sound nin's throat while the other flew past him, slamming into the back of another's head. The second sound nin fell face first right in front of Shinji, who glared at Naruto. I had him, he insisted before slamming his elbow backwards without even looking, hitting a sound nin in the face. That was when Naruto knew. Something about this battle was wrong. Very wrong. Sasuke still hadn't shown up, but already Naruto felt this battle wasn't in their favor. He turned his head just in time to see Tenten fend off an attack before collapsing, seemingly for no reason. "Tenten," Neji hollered, "stay focused," Kakashi ordered as he dodged an attack from Mitsuru. A second later, Naruto was snapped back to his own battle as he felt a stinging pain in his arm. He looked down and noticed a huge gash with rips in his skin around the initial wound. "What the hell? Pay attention, pretty boy." He looked up at Verity as she grinned, a whip in her hand. "Don't want to destroy that pretty face of yours until I've had fun with you." Naruto just glared, his arm healing quickly. Now would really be a good time for Kyuubi, but he didn't think he'd have enough time to perform the seal. Not with everything happening around him. "Oh, so you're the Kyuubi." Naruto's eyes narrowed as Verity stared at his healing wound. "Well, this makes it even better. I can keep hurting you and you'll keep healing." She smirked. Naruto noticed Demike collapse, also for seemingly no reason. This wasn't looking good. Verity cracked her whip at Naruto, but he shifted out of the way, the whip barely grazing his cheek. He winced as he felt his skin rip before reforming. He didn't understand how this was happening. It wasn't until she whipped a third time that he knew. He'd held out his hand and grabbed the whip, ignoring it as the thick leather bit into his hand. He winced as he felt something scraping him. Broken glass. Verity smirked. "I've encrusted my whip with it for two reasons. One is because it causes more damage. The other is in case situations like this arise." She held one hand before her face, closing her eyes. Naruto frowned. "Shower of broken glass," she whispered. Suddenly, Naruto recoiled, letting go of the whip as glass bit into his skin. He stumbled away, cuts everywhere on his body, and just barely managed to duck as he sensed a fist headed for him. Landing on his knees, he hastily rolled away as he felt Kaisa's fist fly in his direction again. "Damn it, hold still," Kaisa's voice said, even though he wasn't visible. The sand around Naruto suddenly started morphing and he jumped away as two huge dogs made of sand began snapping at him with sharp teeth. Naruto continued to evade the invisible man's attacks, kicking the sand dogs to destroy them, but they always returned just as quickly. It wasn't until Naruto ducked another attack that hit Takeshi in the back that he understood. As the other man crumbled to the ground, Naruto's eyes widened. Kaisa could knock people out just by touching them. "Oh shit, you figured it out, haven't you?" Naruto spun around as Verity walked towards him, lazily retracting her whip. "One touch, and you're down for the count." Naruto dodged another attack from Kaisa, vaguely noting that Sai, Shinji and Shikamaru seemed to be in extreme pain. Casting a glance at Kazuma, he suspected he knew why. He looked like he was happily sucking their chakra. This was bad. So very, very bad. If sand didn't come soon, none of them would be standing by the time they did arrive. "I have no choice. It's risky to do it now, but I have to," Naruto thought. Quickly, his hands began to fly in a seal, but he let out a hiss of pain and jumped back as he saw the large wound in his hand. He couldn't complete the seal with that damn bitch waving her whip all over the place. Now, no cheating. Wouldn't want us to release our own seals, would you?" Verity smirked, getting ready to aim again should Naruto try a second time. The blonde Anbu captain grimaced angrily. "Damn, things aren't looking good at all. Where the fuck is Gaara?" Naruto had no choice. He didn't want the Sound Nins to know about this move, but if he didn't use it, they would all be killed. Or worse, they'd be brought to Orochimaru. Not an option. Naruto ran towards Verity, her eyes opening wide in confusion and shock as the blonde Anbu captain hurled himself at her. He dodged her whip and touched her arm briefly before spinning away from her and rushing towards Kazuma. Shikamaru looked up through his pain as he noticed Naruto coming. He was on his hands and knees on the ground, clutching his stomach. He understood what Naruto was doing the second he touched Kazuma and jumped away from him, heading for Mitsuru, who was engaged in battle with Kakashi. Shikamaru just hoped he'd hurry. The genius then scoffed. "Hurry?" he thought with a smirk. Of course he's going to hurry. After all, he's going to be doing the Hiraishin no Jutsu, 3. Naruto couldn't risk touching Kaisa, this he knew. He'd just have to improvise when it came time to deal with him. Naruto smirked as Verity cracked her whip at him and then disappeared. Of course, he wasn't really gone, he was just moving too fast for anyone to see. Naruto silently thanked the Fourth for creating this technique and then teaching it to Jiraiya. Honestly, the old pervert really was useful to Naruto sometimes. Naruto slammed his fist into Verity's face and was flashing towards Kazuma before Verity had even begun to fall. He slammed a kunai deep into Kazuma's gut, the other man stunned at not even having seen Naruto. He began to fall to his knees as Naruto rushed towards Mitsuru. Mitsuru seemed to turn towards Naruto in slow motion and Naruto slammed his fist into the third sound nin's face, sending him crashing to the floor. Naruto had only injured Kazuma as badly as he had because he was the most dangerous as far as he could tell. Now that the sound 4, well, 3 of them, at least, were out of the picture, it left the Konoha Anbu at a slightly better advantage than they had been previously. The others fought ruthlessly, killing sound nins left and right as Naruto struggled to subdue Kaiza. He was still floating around, trying to knock people out. Those who'd fallen due to him hadn't risen, and Naruto wondered how long the effects lasted. The mute blonde looked around the battlefield, for that was what it had turned into. How had this happened? 1 minute, they were all fine, walking along to get to sand, and the next, absolute chaos. How had Sound even found out about this? Naruto ducked under the arm of another sound nin that swung his kunai at him, easily spinning behind him and slamming his hand against the back of the shinobi's neck, sending him crashing to the ground. A sound Naruto knew all too well hit his ears and he spun around in time to see Sakura hit the ground, having just been backhanded across the face. Sakura, the Kyuubi vessel thought wildly, his eyes wide and his brain intent on bringing him over to her. That 1 second of distraction was all that was needed. With a gasp, he jerked forward slightly, his eyes widening before he looked down at the hand impaling him in the upper chest, right through a lung. This person wanted him alive. He knew it, because this person had done this to him before, and had seen Naruto survive. Naruto's eyes began to close as consciousness slipped from him. Sasuke. The hand was wrenched out of his chest and he fell heavily to the ground, his vision dimming until darkness enveloped him. Naruto frowned. What was that annoying crick in his neck? Why did his arms feel numb? Naruto. God, his chest hurt. Why did his chest hurt? Why was it so hard to breathe? Naruto. And who the fuck is calling my name? Annoyed and feeling sleepy, the blonde slowly opened his eyes to focus on the scene before him. It took a minute for his eyes to adjust to the dark room he found himself in, and he frowned. Thank God. Naruto, are you okay? Naruto finally turned to the owner of that voice and couldn't help but smile. Sakura. He'd been so worried about her. The blonde began to pull his hands before him so he could sign, but frowned when they didn't move. Looking up, he realized why, and it also answered the "why are my arms numb?" question. His wrists were locked tightly together above him, held in manacles. He was dangling about an inch off the floor, which would explain why his arms had gone numb. His wrists were supporting all his weight. Naruto? He looked back at Sakura. You can't talk to me. Your arms are immobile in your chakra. She trailed off, sighing as she motioned her own manacles, which also held her an inch off the ground. These chains suck chakra, I think. Otherwise, I'd have been free by now. Naruto sighed. That was the only disadvantage for Sakura. Once her chakra was gone, so was her super strength. Looking around, he tried to establish where they were. The room was so dark it was hard to make anything out. The walls were made of stone and a torch rested against the wall by the door across the room, the only light illuminating the dank dungeon. Other than that, there was nothing. Just him and Sakura, both suspended from the ceiling. Naruto looked down at himself, trying to establish what had happened since he's passed out. For one thing, he finally noticed the cloth tied around his head, gagging him. Oh, the irony. He'd been relieved of his weapons, surprise, and his Junin vest was gone. In fact, everything was gone save for his black pants. Naruto felt very exposed. I watched your wound heal. Naruto looked up at Sakura, noting she was also stripped of everything save her black undershirt and black pants. She had a piece of cloth around her neck, indicating she'd been gagged once, but had managed to remove it. They let you heal for a while before putting on the chakra-sucking chains. They obviously want you alive. Her eyes fell to Naruto's chest, where the wound had previously been. It looked like it was doing fine. You've been out for a while, though. I was scared too much blood had gotten into your lungs. Naruto just shook his head at this. Sakura should have known better. Kyuubi wouldn't have let it happen. Naruto spent the next 5 minutes pondering how to ask Sakura a question he desperately wanted answered. How ask a question with no voice, no hands, and no chakra? He sighed, annoyed, hating that fucking ambush that had caused him to lose his voice. If he ever saw the fucker who'd done it again, Naruto was going to kick his ass to hell and then follow him there to beat the unholy shit out of him again for all eternity. You must have questions. Naruto looked up at Sakura. I'll try and answer questions I think you may be asking me, but please be patient. Naruto merely nodded before motioning around the room with his head. Where are we? He nodded. Sound, I believe. I was unconscious since the battle, and when I woke up, we were here. Based on our blueprints, I'd say this is one of the dungeons. Naruto cocked an eyebrow, silently telling her this was obvious. Don't get, she snapped irritably. Naruto sighed again before trying to think of how to ask his next question. He lightly hit his forehead against his upper arm, Sakura frowning at the action, unsure of what he was asking. He did it a few more times before sighing and looking around. He was trying to motion his Hite-8 to inquire about the other Konoha shinobi. Sorry, I don't understand. Naruto sighed again, looking around. He looked back at her again and closed his left eye. This she understood. She wasn't known as the smartest kunoichi in Konoha for nothing. Kakashi-sensei? Naruto nodded. I don't know. You were the only one in here when I woke up. I don't know what happened to him, or the others. Naruto then lowered his head, glaring at Sakura through his bangs. Sasuke-kun? He nodded again. I haven't seen him. I don't know what's going on. I don't even know how much time has passed since we've been down here. Could have been hours, could have been days. Naruto lowered his head with a sigh. This really sucked. It was hopeless. Don't you dare give up, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto's head snapped up and he found himself glaring into cold, green eyes. Don't make me come over there and beat you. The Naruto I know would never give up like that. What, just because it's Sasuke-kun, you'll hang there to rot? Naruto's eyebrows shot into his hairline. I'm a damsel in distress, damn it. Save me. It's what the hero always does, right? She offered him a weak smile, and he couldn't help but smile back, or try to. The gag kind of made it hard. Taking a deep breath and grabbing the chains above the manacles, Naruto grunted as he hauled himself up so his face was level with his hands, staring at the cuffs around his wrists. Okay, now what? Naruto let himself fall back down and felt pain shoot up his arms from jerking them. He tried to whimper, but of course, he wasn't even granted that luxury. Stupid voice box, I fucking hate you. I want to whimper. Naruto sighed as he looked up at his hands and then frowned. He didn't need chakra to call the fox forth. Maybe Kyuubi could find a way out of this. His hands were still somewhat mobile, so he was sure he could do his seals. Signing was impossible to do, but a seal shouldn't be too bad. Sakura watched him, frowning as she recognized the seals he was doing. That's not going to help. She whispered, Naruto slumping limply in his chains again, unconscious. Sakura had seen this loads of times before. When the fox couldn't come to Naruto, he pulled Naruto to him. Naruto walked through the dark corridors, his feet splashing against the water, and pipes dripping said water onto him. He hurried through the passages, not sure how long he had. He reached the large Kyuubi cage and saw the fox in human form pacing on the other side restlessly. The second he saw Naruto, he rounded on him angrily behind his bars. Idiot, what happened? Naruto never knew his face could look so menacing, but the fox showed him it was definitely possible. Sasuke, Naruto said simply. The fox's mouth snapped shut and he growled. It rumbled throughout the large room, causing the floor to shake. That bastard, Kyuubi hollered angrily. How dare that mortal do this to my host's body? Does he not know how important you are to my survival? Wow, Fox, for a second there, I thought you cared. Naruto stated dryly. Don't get, Kit. Kyuubi growled. You know I care for you more than I let on. We have a problem, Naruto stated, ignoring Kyuubi's last comment. Can you switch with me? Kyuubi shook his head, running his hand through his flaming red hair. No, I can't. I felt your call, but something is keeping me here. Probably the chakra constrictor. Sakura can't even get free. Where are we? Kyuubi demanded. Sound, you're going to kill Uchiha, right? The fox's eyes narrowed. Naruto ignored the question. Is there anything you can do to get us out of this? Break my chains, at least? Anything at all? As much as I hate to admit it, no. There's nothing I can do. Naruto sighed. I guess we're screwed, then. Do not always rely on my power, brat. The fox snapped, the room rumbling due to his anger. Naruto stared at him wide-eyed. You have your own power, which is far greater than my own. Focus on escaping with that. And then, Naruto felt himself being jerked backwards. Naruto opened his eyes, shaking his head to clear his vision. Welcome back. He looked up at Sakura. I knew it wouldn't work. We're going to have to figure out a way out of here without his help. Sakura's mouth snapped shut as they both heard footsteps echoing down the corridor outside their door. It didn't mean whoever was coming would be entering their room. There were a lot of dungeons down here, after all, but they didn't want to get caught with Sakura talking. They needed to stay out of people's minds for as long as possible. They heard a door somewhere down the corridor squeak open before Kabuto spoke. Hello, Kakashi. I'm going to have fun with you. Naruto's eyes widened as he began struggling wildly. Shit, Kabuto's going to destroy him. Naruto began swinging, trying anything he could think of to get free. When the swinging did nothing, he pulled himself up again, trying to see how the manacles were attached so he could release them. Nothing he saw helped. Both Naruto and Sakura's heads snapped towards the door as they heard an ear-shattering scream. Kakashi-sensei. Sakura whispered, tears welling in her eyes. This was bad. This was so very, very bad. The screaming was so loud it blocked out the sound of footsteps coming to their room. Neither knew they had a visitor until the door swung open and both stared at a face they both loved and hated. Sasuke-kun, Sakura whispered. The raven said nothing as he stepped into the room, closing the door and placing his hand against it. Instantly, the screaming beyond the door stopped, indicating he'd soundproofed the room with chakra. Sasuke-kun, how could you? Naruto could have died. Sakura screamed angrily. And Kakashi-sensei, how can you just stand there and ignore what Kabuto is? She was cut off as Sasuke appeared before her, putting the gag back in place. This didn't stop Sakura. She continued to try and speak through it, although obviously, it was all muffled. I don't want to hear your annoying voice. Sasuke stated before turning his back on her and walking over to Naruto. I want to hear the dobies. Naruto merely narrowed his eyes at Sasuke. Even if he had a voice, after hearing that, he wouldn't have spoken at all, just to piss the bastard off. Sasuke walked slowly around Naruto, inspecting him from every angle. You haven't changed much since I last saw you. I didn't expect you to. You always were a loser. Naruto ignored what he said, staring straight ahead at Sakura, who was breathing hard, anger evident in her eyes. He didn't think it had anything to do with the fact that Sasuke had brushed her off. She was furious about what was happening to Kakashi, and Sasuke was doing nothing about it. Was this really who Sasuke had become? Another version of Itachi? Sasuke suddenly appeared in front of Naruto again and grabbed his gag. He ripped the cloth from Naruto's head, causing a few strands of hair stuck in the knot at the back to rip free from his head. He would have bitten out a curse had he possessed the ability to. Since he lacked it, he settled for gritting his teeth and glaring at Sasuke. The raven ignored the glare and placed his hand flat against Naruto's chest. The blonde convulsed violently as chakra was forced into his body. He squeezed his eyes shut against the pain, not even noticing as Sasuke bent down in front of him, coming level with Naruto's stomach, where the seal had appeared due to the chakra forced into his body. So, this is the seal, huh? Sasuke said as he examined it with his eyes. The Kyuubi no Kitsune. He stood up, smirking at Naruto. The blonde just glared. You know, I knew that a loser like you wouldn't be able to match me like you did all those times. You're not strong enough. It was this thing inside you that gave you that power. There was no warning before Sasuke's hand collided with Naruto's face. Sakura winced as the sharp sound reverberated in the empty dungeon. Sasuke grabbed Naruto's hair, forcing the blonde to look at him as he bit out his next words. How dare you call yourself my equal when you cheated in such a manner? Using the Kyuubi's powers to attain everything you did. You disgust me. Sasuke punched Naruto this time instead of slapping him. Naruto winced, spitting out blood as a small trail of it dribbled down the side of his mouth. Nice, Naruto thought, almost sighing. And here I thought we'd have a fair fight. Naruto should have known better. Sasuke knew his strength. He wouldn't challenge Naruto to a fair fight unless he'd gained enough power to beat him. Naruto had won last time, and the only reason Sasuke had escaped was because the sound 4 different from the ones that had been sent to Konoha to fetch Sasuke, and the ones they'd encountered earlier, had come to protect him. Naruto had killed them all, but during the battle, Kabuto had appeared and whisked away with Sasuke. Naruto had saved Sasuke from being taken over by Orochimaru for another 3 years, but of course, the Uchiha would never admit he'd been saved. Too proud. Fucking bastard, Naruto thought, annoyed. As if reading his thoughts merely by looking into his eyes, Sasuke punched Naruto in the gut. The blonde gasped, trying to suck in air. He gulped loudly before coughing, trying to hunch over instinctively to protect his stomach. I know what you were thinking, demon. Naruto's eyes snapped up at this word. The blonde had never felt those words hurt him as much as they did coming out of his best friend's mouth. For even though Sasuke had tried to kill him, even though Sasuke had abandoned him, he was still Naruto's best friend. And a best friend would never utter those words to him. Ever. Sakura was obviously infuriated by Sasuke's words, and she began thrashing angrily, kicking her legs, trying to hit Sasuke. The bastard had to pay. Day and night, the pink-haired Kunoichi kept Naruto safe from those words. Safe from the evil of the people of the village. And now, those words had just come out of Uchiha Sasuke's mouth. That was unacceptable. Sasuke himself ignored the girl behind him, gazing into Naruto's blue eyes. They were filled with hurt. He hadn't necessarily wanted that. He just wanted Naruto to say something. The blonde had had his gag off for some time now, and still he said nothing. Sasuke had expected verbal abuse the second the gag came off. Instead, he received eerie silence and glares. He was acting almost exactly like Sasuke. The Raven frowned at this, displeased. This boy wasn't supposed to be silent. He wasn't supposed to glare and just hang there without yelling or trying to hurt Sasuke. He was supposed to shout at him, lash out, hurt him verbally to equal all the physical blows Sasuke sent him. But he didn't. Sasuke felt his world beginning to crash around him. He didn't understand. Why wasn't Naruto the same? Anger replaced confusion, because it was more satisfying. Sasuke enjoyed it more. He pulled out a kunai and before either Konoha shinobi could realize what had happened, he drove the kunai into Naruto's shoulder up to the hilt. The blonde's mouth opened in a silent scream as Sasuke twisted the kunai viciously inside Naruto's flesh, tearing it, destroying it. Sasuke growled. Still the blonde made no sound. If you won't scream, Dobi, I'll fucking make you. Sasuke screamed angrily as he pulled out another kunai, aiming for Naruto's stomach. He wrenched the kunai in Naruto's shoulder out the second the one in his other hand connected with the Anbu's stomach. Come on, Naruto. Scream for me. Naruto found it hard to breathe as he was invaded with a sensation he'd hardly ever felt before in his life. Pain. Unbelievably excruciating pain. Naruto had never felt anything like it, and he soon realized why it hurt so much. Kyuubi couldn't heal it. His eyes widened at this realization as he saw Sasuke aiming the kunai that had been in his shoulder. With wide eyes, Naruto watched the kunai fly through the air to hit him in the hip. He had a feeling this was going to be one of the worst days of his life. Naruto awoke with a muted groan, his mind struggling for consciousness. His head was pounding unmercifully, and he could feel dry blood cake to the back of his head, as well as other places on his body. Bastard, he thought angrily. He couldn't even clean the blood off. That's going to be hell to get out of my hair later. Of course, that was when Naruto realized it would be hell, provided he was still around later. He might very well die. Especially if Orochimaru decided to extract Kyuubi. The blonde shifted gingerly and winced as all his wounds clamored for attention at once. Sasuke had been harsh, no doubt about that. Naruto was sure it was going to get much, much worse, though. He heard something that could have been a muffled version of his name and turned his head slightly. That was when he realized he was no longer hanging from the ceiling. He tried to move his arms and legs, and realized he was strapped down to a table. He hoped it was in a kinky way. He really wished it was in a kinky way. Why couldn't it be in a kinky way? He heard the muffled version of his name again and his eyes focused on Sakura. She was still chained to the ceiling, and her eyes were red and puffy, as if she'd been crying. She probably had been. There wasn't a scratch on her, but he knew she'd been crying. Probably for him. Naruto made a mental note to thank Sasuke. He hadn't hurt Sakura. That was good enough for him at the moment. As long as she was all right, he was all right. He offered her a weak smile, which was probably a bad idea, because tears began cascading down her cheeks again. Her body shook as she cried, unable to look at Naruto. He sighed, turning to stare at the ceiling again. How long had he been unconscious? He hated not having any concept of time, it bothered him. His stomach rumbled, reminding him he hadn't eaten for, he didn't know how long, but it had been a while. The last meal he'd had was right before leaving for this mission. Man, he wanted some ramen. Sakura's head shot up and Naruto's turned to the door as they heard footsteps. Naruto silently prayed they were coming for him, and not Kakashi or Sakura. He couldn't stand to lie there and listen to his former sensei scream. It was more than he could bear. Hearing Kakashi scream in agony was truly the worst torture thus far, in his opinion. Someone as strong as Kakashi had no reason to scream. His wish was granted as the door opened slowly to show Sasuke. Sakura began trying to talk again, but the gag stopped her, so Sasuke just ignored her. He closed the door behind himself and walked up to Naruto, putting a vial of something down beside the blonde's head. Naruto just stared at Sasuke, wondering what kind of sadistic ideas he was going to come up with this time. He knew Sasuke wouldn't stop. All he'd said earlier that day, or was it yesterday, was he wanted to hear Naruto scream. Naruto would have complied after a certain point, but he couldn't. It wasn't his fault. If only Sasuke would let someone tell him that. Then again, would he stop? Probably not. Ready to cooperate? Sasuke inquired as he removed Naruto's gag. You realize I'm going to continue with this until you scream, right? And then we'll start with the interrogations. Naruto looked away from Sasuke. The sadistic smirk on his face didn't suit him. The Sharingan constantly activated didn't suit him. The Sound Ninja's outfit didn't suit him. Nothing that made Sasuke look different suited him. Naruto wanted his Sasuke back. The blonde winced as he was slapped across the face. Hard. Blood trickled from a reopened cut at the corner of his mouth as Sasuke grabbed him by the hair and forced him to look at him. Why are you being so fucking brave, Dobi? Sasuke hissed angrily. Sakura doesn't love you, so why are you trying to impress her? Sakura began trying to yell again at this, but again, Sasuke just ignored her. I am losing my patience. He hissed at the blonde, chirping beginning to be heard in the room. Naruto watched as Sasuke's free hand, the one not tugging mercilessly at his hair, came into view, Chidori blazing in it. Sasuke lowered his hand to Naruto's stomach, the edges of the damaging attack grazing the blonde's skin. Naruto grit his teeth as burns began to form on his stomach, his muscles jerking uncontrollably. Wounds began to reopen due to the treatment they received and blood oozed out of them. Sasuke moved his hand up, leaving a large burn line from Naruto's stomach to just below his neck, and then sucked the chakra back into his hand, closing it. Chidori was gone. What do I have to do to hear your voice again? Sasuke demanded, his eyes narrowed. When he received no reply, he growled and released Naruto, grabbing a strap that hadn't been attached. He tied it around Naruto's head, securing the blonde's head in place so he couldn't turn it. He then placed one finger on either side of his eyelids, holding his right eye open. Surging chakra into the blonde's skin, his eye was forced to stay open, no matter how hard he tried to close it. Sasuke repeated the process with Naruto's left eye before picking up the vial he dropped beside Naruto's head. He held the vial in front of Naruto's eyes. Do you know what this is? Naruto seemed to be ignoring him. Sasuke just smirked. This is acid, Naruto-kun. Naruto's already wide eyes opened even wider. Even Sakura was pulling wildly at her bonds, trying to get free. This was bad. Very, very bad. Finally, a reaction I anticipated. Fear. Sasuke pulled away from Naruto, opening the vial of acid. You must be terrified of losing your eyes, Naruto. After all, they must be the most precious thing to you. Naruto's head jerked back as if he'd been slapped. If Sasuke believed that, then he truly knew nothing about Naruto. Naruto valued his voice more than anything else, but now that he'd lost that, and his eyes were in danger, he would admit, yes, his eyes were probably the next most important thing to him. You can't be a ninja anymore without eyes. So scream, Naruto, or I'll give you a reason to scream. Sasuke said as he put the vial's stopper down and leaned over Naruto, the acid in his hand. All I want is to hear your voice, Naruto. I want to hear you speak to me. If you don't, then you can say goodbye to your eyes. Naruto began to hyperventilate as Sakura screamed helplessly from the other side of the room, trying to tell Sasuke that Naruto couldn't speak. She fought savagely against her bonds, trying desperately to pull her gag off. To do something, Sasuke-kun, Naruto can't speak, please, she thought wildly, trying to get his attention. Just like all the other times, the Uchiha ignored her, unaware that what he was asking for was impossible. Naruto opened his mouth, trying to make a sound come out. A squeak, a whimper, anything. He wanted so badly to give Sasuke what he wanted, but he just couldn't, damn it. You have until I reach 10. Sasuke said as he positioned the vial above Naruto's left eye. Naruto's breathing was short and ragged as he opened his mouth again, forming words with his lips, but no sound emitting from his throat. 1. Sakura struggled madly. 2. Naruto tried to force something to come out. 3. Sasuke tilted the vial. 4. Sakura screamed through her gag, trying to make Sasuke understand. 5. Naruto's eyes widened as he thought of never being able to see again. 6. Sasuke stared into the terrified blue eyes before him. 7. Sakura began swinging, trying to kick Sasuke or something so he would pay attention to her. 8. Naruto stopped struggling and just lay there. It was over. 9. This is it, Naruto thought, tears falling from his eyes. I'm going to be blind. I won't be able to speak. I won't be able to see. My dream, I'll never be Hokage. How can I be Hokage if I'm blind? What kind of ninja can I be if I'm blind? It's over. 10. Naruto watched helplessly as the vial tipped, the liquid closer and closer to falling into his eye. Sasuke watched as he tipped the vial, silently praying for Naruto to say something. Anything. He didn't want to do this, he just wanted to hear his voice. He just wanted to know that nothing had changed. Sasuke wanted to know that he was still better. But Naruto wasn't complying. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. This made Sasuke even angrier. The blonde baka was just making fun of him. 10. He finally said, tipping the vial even more so the first drop of acid would fall into the blonde's left eye. Sasuke-sama. Sasuke pulled the vial back, the liquid just barely having been retained within the vial as he turned to look at Mitsuru. Orochimaru-sama wishes to speak with you. I'm busy, he said coldly, his face a stoic mask of indifference. He requests your presence and will not take no for an answer. Sasuke heard the warning in that tone. As much as he didn't want to, he was going to have to go. Turning back to the blonde, who had tears running down his face, he smirked. We'll finish this later, Dobi. With those words, the raven grabbed the stopper for the vial of acid before he turned and exited the room, closing the door behind himself. His two teammates were left alone. Naruto breathed hard as he closed his eyes, the chakra holding them open having disappeared once Sasuke left. Tears flowed down his face as he thought of how close he'd been to losing his eyesight. Was this really Sasuke? Was this the same Sasuke he'd known back when they were 12? Really? You're a burden. All the time. You did it, Sasuke. Look at yourself. You idiot. Why? You protected me. Who knows? I hated you. Why? Why did you protect me? I didn't ask you to. Who knows? My body moved on its own, idiot. Sasuke. That man. I didn't want to die until I killed my brother. You, don't die. No, this couldn't be Sasuke. It couldn't be. Naruto wanted to cry. Naruto wanted to scream at the top of his lungs. He wanted to break things, hurt people. He wanted to destroy everything because nothing was as it should be. This was not Sasuke. The Sasuke they all knew was truly gone, and he wasn't coming back. Sakura watched Naruto as he just lay there, crying and hyperventilating. Tears were falling across her own cheeks, and she knew she would never forgive Sasuke for this. He was actually going to do it. She could tell. He was about to pour the acid into Naruto's gorgeous blue eyes, and blind someone who used to be his best friend. He hadn't tried to listen to Sakura. He hadn't tried to understand why Naruto had his mouth open but no words were coming out. He was just sadistic and evil. Sakura wondered how she could ever have liked someone like him. She said Naruto's name, having it muffled by the gag. Naruto didn't react. He just continued to cry. Sakura couldn't blame him. She wanted to comfort him, and to do that, she had to remove the gag. Besides, if she wanted to tell Sasuke the truth about why Naruto wasn't making a sound, she needed to be able to speak. She needed to stop the Raven before he did something she would never forgive him for, even though everything he'd done so far was beyond forgiveness. Sasuke walked into Orochimaru's chambers, both annoyed and relieved at having been interrupted. God, that idiot was so fucking stupid. Why hadn't he just said one word? Just one. A squeak, a scream. Sasuke's name, anything. Sasuke shook his head as he made his way to the table Orochimaru was sitting at, taking a seat across from the cage of sound. Sasuke-kun. He smirked at the young Uchiha. How has your visit with Naruto-kun been? Is this the only reason you've interrupted me? Sasuke asked as he narrowed his eyes, crossing his arms, annoyed. The snake man frowned angrily at Sasuke's disrespect, but he let it slide, for now, anyway. I am going to have a test. Sasuke cocked his eyebrow. I want to test the Kyuubi vessel's powers. Mitsuru, Kaiza, Verity and Kazuma have told me his power is great, and he subdued 3 of them at once before dealing with Kaiza. I may have use for him other than just extracting the Kyuubi. He's kinda hot, too. Sasuke jerked around as he heard Verity, unaware that the Sound 4 had entered. He turned back to Orochimaru hastily to assess his reaction to these words. His heart fell into the pit of his stomach as he saw the glint in Orochimaru's eyes. I have not seen Naruto-kun for 3 years. Not since the incident with Sai back when he was 15. Perhaps I should investigate his new look. Sasuke felt sick to his stomach. He would rather have the snake bastard running his slimy hands all over him rather than doing anything to Naruto. Whether Sasuke was a traitor or not, he still regarded Naruto as his best friend, despite everything he'd been doing to the blonde. To have Orochimaru touch him, that was the worst torture ever. No, Sasuke couldn't let it happen. He'd rather kill the blonde than force him to go through that. He hasn't changed, Sasuke said smoothly, causing Orochimaru to look at him. Sasuke leaned back in his chair, avoiding the snake's gaze as he turned his head to stare at the wall in a bored manner. He's still the same blonde doby he was the last time you saw him. Same or not, the guy is hot. Sasuke grit his teeth. He was going to snap Verity's fucking neck. I must see him either way. I will have him fight the 4 of you once Sasuke-kun has finished with him. Has he not satisfied your need for pain, Sasuke-kun? Sasuke looked back at him, his eyes narrowed. No. Well then, I suggest you return to your fun. I shall not interrupt you again until you are satisfied. Sasuke saw the glint in the man's eyes and decided he would stretch this out as long as possible. Orochimaru-sama? Sasuke and Orochimaru turned to Mitsuru, and Sasuke could practically feel the sadism radiating off the other man. Once Sasuke-sama has finished, may we torture him? Mitsuru motioned himself and the other Sound 4. Once we have finished with him, he will have no will to fight left in him. He will be more submissive. Sasuke couldn't help the growl from rising in his throat. He wanted Naruto to fight with everything he had when the snake bastard brought him to his room. No, Orochimaru said, causing Mitsuru to wince. Once Sasuke-kun has finished with him, you will fight him so we can measure his strength. Then, I will have him. Afterwards, you may do whatever you wish with him as long as you do not kill him. Of course, provided he is worth keeping. If not, you can torture him to your heart's content and then we shall extract the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Sasuke's heart took up residence in his throat. He'd never prayed for Naruto to be stronger in his life. He didn't want his best friend to die. Sasuke's head snapped back, startled at these thoughts. He'd always known the blonde was important to him, but Sasuke had always thought it was because he knew no matter how hard the other boy tried, Sasuke was always better than him. Now, Sasuke realized that Naruto was important to him. Really important. Even after all these years, Sasuke had just thought of Naruto as his best friend. He also realized that when he'd entered Naruto and Sakura's dungeon, he'd soundproofed the room to stop himself from hearing Kakashi's agonized screams. He'd also interrupted Verity while she'd been torturing Neji and made out with her, if only to keep her away from the Hyuga for a little while. Dear God, what the fuck is happening to me? Sasuke thought, confused. Was he loyal to Sound, or Konoha? Naruto struggled wildly as 2 Sound nins came into the room, one of them injecting something into his arm before he went limp. He was still awake, and was aware of everything that was going on around him, but he couldn't move. His straps were undone and he was lifted off the table, dragged limply to his previous location. The sound nins grunted as they struggled to pull his muscular form into a standing position. One of them held him as the other went to the other end of the manacles and lowered the chain until it was within reach. The two of them held Naruto's arms up, clapping the metal cuffs around his wrists. Naruto grit his teeth as one of the cuffs closed on his skin, causing his wrist to start bleeding heavily. The sound nins noticed, but did nothing. Naruto silently prayed he would just bleed to death. Of course, this thought earned him a growl from Kyuubi, but he ignored it. He could take a lot of shit from people, especially growing up in Konoha as the Kyuubi vessel, but his best friend torturing him was one thing he couldn't take. That was just a little hard to wrap his head around. Look on the bright side, he sighed to himself. At least you know your eyes are safe, since you're not lying on the table anymore. He heard mumbling and looked up at Sakura, the action in itself almost impossible since he couldn't move due to the drug. He managed to get his head up, leaning it to the side to rest against his lifted arm so he could keep it up. He sighed relieved as he noticed Sakura was still fine. He was glad. He'd passed out on the table a while back and had woken up only about 2 minutes before the sound nins had come in. He hadn't looked at Sakura, his mind still playing on the fact that he'd almost lost his eyes. He felt kind of guilty now, worrying about himself over Sakura. That wasn't right. Sakura had tears streaming down her face, and Naruto forced himself to smile, mouthing that he was okay. He saw anger flash in her eyes and winced. He'd forgotten he wasn't allowed to say he was okay to Sakura. She always knew he wasn't okay. And especially not now. But, honestly, what was he supposed to say? He was being tortured mercilessly by his own best friend. Naruto was caught between wanting to laugh at the irony of it all, and cry at the fact that this was happening. Was this truly Sasuke? Naruto was almost willing to bet it was Itachi using a fucking henge or something. When had Sasuke become so cold and uncaring? Naruto snorted. Right, stupid question. The bastard was always cold and uncaring. But, this much? Naruto's head snapped up and Sakura turned to look at the door as they heard footsteps. Naruto had passed out again. How long had he been unconscious? They couldn't be coming back for him already. Damn it, couldn't Sasuke give him a few minutes of fucking peace? The footsteps stopped outside the door and it creaked open slowly, Naruto's heart beating wildly in his chest as he saw the silhouette of Sasuke in the doorway. The Uchiha walked into the room before closing the door behind him and placing his hand on the door to soundproof the room, like he always did. Whether it was to stop people outside from listening in, or stop them all from hearing what was going on outside, Naruto didn't know. Of course, he would have asked if he'd had the ability to. Honestly, Sasuke doesn't know me at all. Probably never did, Naruto thought sadly. First, he thinks my eyes are the most important thing to me, and then he thinks I'm not screaming because I'm trying to be brave. I thought he was smart, yet he can't piece it together. Naruto paused for a second, frowning. Well, at least this answers my scar question. I must not have it if he hasn't noticed a large, gaping hole used to be in my throat. Naruto's head turned to the side as Sasuke punched him. Naruto didn't bother looking back at the raven. He'd just get hit again. Either way, he was forced to look back at Sasuke because the other boy grabbed the blonde locks of his best friend and forced him to face him. Red Sharingan eyes locked on solid blue. Ready to talk, Dobi? Naruto glared, but kept his mouth shut. Obviously, Sasuke was never going to get it. There was no point in trying to explain and get hit again for pretending he couldn't speak. Heaven forbid he should insult the precious Uchiha Sasuke. Whether he'd kept his mouth closed or not, it didn't really matter. Sasuke was annoyed that he was being ignored, and he promptly hit the blonde across the face again, seeing the bruising already present from his previous beatings turning darker. He glanced at Naruto and took note of all his injuries. All the injuries Sasuke himself had inflicted on him. The burns, the cuts, the bruises, they were all him. Yet he'll never know how much better this is than what Orochimaru is planning to do to him, Sasuke thought with a frown. Sasuke himself was strong, he knew this. He was stronger than Naruto. Always had been, always would be, despite how the blonde was acting now. Sasuke had barely been able to stand himself after the first time with Orochimaru, but constant training and being taught new jutsus allowed him to retain a part of himself that made him able to deal with what the snake was doing to him. Naruto was too innocent, too pure. He would come out of that completely broken, and Sasuke wasn't ready to see that, no matter how much he tried to convince himself he didn't care about the blonde. Truth was, he did. He cared about Naruto. He cared about Sakura, too. And Kakashi, and Neji, and all the other Konoha shinobi, even the ones he didn't know. This was his village. The people being tortured were a part of his past. Sure, it had been grim, but some moments had been special. After all, if Sasuke didn't care, he wouldn't have saved Naruto from Haku all those years ago. He wouldn't have broken Zaku's arms mercilessly for injuring Sakura while he and Naruto were unconscious. He wouldn't have been worried about Kakashi when he found out Itachi had used Mangekyo on him. No, Sasuke cared. Despite trying not to, despite telling himself he didn't need these people, he did. And that was why he was going to torture Naruto until the blonde screamed. He was going to keep that as his breaking point to enable Naruto to stay sheltered from Orochimaru for as long as possible. Naruto was being stubborn, and Sasuke was confident the blonde would keep his mouth shut for a while yet. Besides, Sasuke couldn't deny this fact, either. He wanted to hurt Naruto. Why was he so damn special all the time? Just because of that fucking demon in him? He was acknowledged by Itachi, by Orochimaru, Jiraiya had taken him in as his apprentice and Tsunade regarded him as a son. The three powerful Sannin and Uchiha Itachi all regarded him as strong and important. Why? Because of that fucking demon fox? Sasuke would have gladly taken that damn parasite if it meant the power to destroy his brother. Naruto always looked at it as a burden, but Sasuke saw it for what Naruto should have, a gift. A chance to be the best, no matter the odds. And for this, Sasuke hated him. Always had, always would. But friendship was always stronger than hate, and no matter how much Sasuke hated him, he wanted to protect him. And so, he would. He would torture Naruto both because he wanted to hurt Naruto, and because he wanted to protect him. Only an Uchiha could think in such a twisted, sadistic way. Still holding your tongue, huh, Naruto? Sasuke asked as he pulled out a kunai, playing with it as he walked around Naruto, inspecting every inch of him, staring at every wound he'd inflicted. It made him smirk that Kyuubi wasn't healing him. This was probably all so new to Naruto. Pain, Sasuke whispered from right behind Naruto, leaning close so his lips brushed against the blonde's ear. It's not something you're used to, is it, Dobi? I mean, of course you've felt it before. I was always saving your ass on missions. But Kyuubi, Sasuke spat out the name, always healed them for you. You felt the pain, but only for a second. He shifted so he was speaking into Naruto's other ear now. How does it feel to experience pain like a normal person? Sasuke dug the kunai into Naruto's side and the blonde screwed his eyes shut, his mouth open in a silent scream. In a way, Naruto was glad he had no voice box. He would have turned himself mute anyway, just screaming in pain the whole time he was in sound. Vaguely, he wondered if he'd live long enough to hear his own voice again. He wondered if he'd even live to see the next day. Every time Sasuke visited, the chances of him surviving another day were getting smaller and smaller. Still being the hero you think you are, huh, Uzumaki? Sasuke wrenched the kunai from Naruto's side and blood splattered on the floor and wall. More of the red liquid oozing slowly out of the wound and down his side. Scream. Naruto's head began to droop as his eyes closed slowly. Everything was hazy, and he suspected it was the blood loss. After all, his entire right arm was covered in blood from the wound in his wrist that no one had bothered to cover. Hey, you're not passing out on me yet. Sasuke slapped Naruto across the face and the blonde wheezed. Sasuke frowned. Maybe he'd taken things too far. Walking out of the room, Sasuke headed down the corridor for the medicine cabinet. He opened it and fished around inside until he found the bottle of pills he was looking for. Kabuto was an expert at torture and he'd taught Sasuke a few things about how to keep them conscious under certain conditions. Naruto was threatening to pass out due to blood loss, so Sasuke just had to add more blood. Simple as that. With a blood-replenishing pill in his hand, Sasuke went back to the cell and closed the door behind him. He walked up to Naruto and held his head up roughly by the hair. He forced Naruto's jaw open and forced the pill into the back of the blonde's throat before clamping his mouth shut. "Swallow it," he ordered. Naruto didn't. He wouldn't obey Sasuke, no matter what happened. At this point, the Raven was running out of things to do to Naruto, and the only thing that he would be worried about was his eyes. They appeared to be in no danger, so he didn't obey. He just glared at Sasuke, the pill sitting on his tongue. Sasuke growled, angered at being ignored. Fine. He let go of Naruto and walked across the room. The action caused Naruto's eyes to widen and he thanked God he hadn't spit the pill out, because there wouldn't have been any way for him to retrieve it. Sasuke reached Sakura, who began to tremble, and brought the kunai he held, still covered in Naruto's blood, up to the pink-haired girl's face. Without even casting Naruto a glance, he cut into Sakura's left cheek, leaving a large gash which began to ooze blood. Sakura whimpered, but made no other sound. Sasuke turned to Naruto to see his reaction and the blonde struggled wildly. Swallow it. Naruto stopped his struggling, breathing hard. What could he do? He couldn't just let Sakura be hurt like that because he wouldn't swallow a fucking pill. He didn't know what the pill was, this was true, but Sakura in pain wasn't an option. Naruto's blood loss made his mind foggy, and it took him longer than usual to think about the consequences, which gave Sasuke enough time to cut another gash into Sakura's cheek. Naruto began struggling again to get Sasuke's attention and the raven turned to him. Well? Naruto locked eyes with Sakura, but the girl just shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. Naruto smiled sadly before he closed his eyes and swallowed. Sakura held her breath, fearing the worst for her best friend, but then she noticed his wounds beginning to bleed heavily again, and frowned. Sasuke had replenished his blood? What the fuck was the Uchiha doing? Damn Dobi. Sasuke growled as he turned away from Sakura, completely ignoring her existence once again. I give you blood to keep you alive, and then I have to threaten fucking Sakura to get you to swallow it. Naruto just glared, something he seemed to be doing a lot lately. The Uchiha's presence just seemed to infuriate him. Don't look at me like that. Sasuke hollered, slashing at Naruto's cheek with the kunai. Naruto winced slightly as the metal bit into his skin, but otherwise did nothing. Don't. Slash to the face. Fucking. Slash to the chest. Look. Slash to the right arm. At. Slash to the left arm. Me. Slash to the stomach. Like. Slash to the face again. That. Sasuke punched Naruto hard across the face, panting in anger. His fist was covered in blood, but none of it was his own. The various wounds on Naruto were all bleeding slowly and Sasuke cursed the fact that Naruto would bleed to death before he'd even finished with him. The raven concentrated chakra into his hand and began to move it across the blonde's skin where wounds were bleeding. He did nothing but stem the blood flow, keeping the wounds still open and raw. He wanted Naruto to hurt, he just needed him alive to feel it. He walked behind Naruto, tapping the blood-covered kunai against his lips in thought as he inspected the blonde's back. He'd been neglecting it, and it was smooth and injury-free. That wouldn't do, not in the slightest. Sasuke began slashing at the blonde's back, drawing patterns in the smooth, tanned skin before he was finally satisfied with how it looked. He leaned across the blonde's shoulder again, whispering in his ear. Are you ready to scream, Dobi? When he received no reply, he dug his fingers into the nearest cut and began pulling down, literally ripping the skin off his best friend's back. Naruto swung his legs and bucked helplessly to get Sasuke to let go, but it was futile. Sasuke blocked the weak kicks and just followed Naruto as he swung around, his fingers still buried deep in the blonde's back. He pulled his fingers out as another thought crossed his mind and he left the room again. Naruto hung from the ceiling, panting, covered in blood, and feeling pain taking over his mind. Sakura was crying across the room, but Naruto didn't even notice. And if he had, what would it have mattered? Would her tears alleviate his pain? Would her tears help them escape? No, it was better he didn't see the tears. At this point, he just wanted the pain to go away. Sasuke returned a few seconds later, holding a small flask of clear liquid. Naruto frowned for a few seconds before he noticed the smirk on Sasuke's lips. He paled and his eyes widened, for he knew what that was. Acid. Naruto screwed his eyes shut, not willing to let Sasuke take something else precious to him. Yusura Tonkachi, Sasuke said as he walked around the blonde and stood behind him, undoing the top of the flask. Naruto opened his eyes at this and turned his head slightly to look at Sasuke before deciding he'd rather look ahead at Sakura. And then, Naruto felt burning pain in his back. Sasuke threw the acid onto the blonde's back, Naruto's body convulsing with pain as he screwed his eyes shut and opened his mouth in a silent scream. Scream for me. Sasuke hollered angrily as he threw the flask aside, the glass breaking into thousands of pieces. Beg for me to stop. Sasuke walked around Naruto, looking into the blonde's face. He saw pain etched into every piece of his face, and this only angered him further. Why was the blonde being so fucking stubborn? Why couldn't he just scream like Sasuke wanted him to? Why couldn't he just fucking voice his pain? Sasuke just wanted to hear his voice again. Hear the pain-filled screams emit from Naruto's throat and know he was the cause. Prove that he was still better, and that Naruto would forever work to beat him. Because that was one of the only reasons Sasuke was still alive. To kill Itachi. And forever be better than Uzumaki Naruto. Why won't you scream? Sasuke punched the blonde across the face. What the fuck do I have to do to make you scream? He continued to punch the blonde, hardly even noticing the blue eyes had slipped shut. Scream, hardly noticing Sakura struggling wildly behind him. Scream, hardly noticing Naruto was hanging limply from the chains, bleeding to death, as he was being knocked unconscious. Scream, stop it. Sasuke's hand froze in midair and he turned, stunned, as Sakura shrieked this. When had she taken her gag off? He can't speak, she screamed again, tears flowing down her cheeks. Sasuke stared at her with an unreadable expression on his face. Sakura continued to cry as she bowed her head. He can't speak, she sobbed. He can't speak, he can't speak, he can't speak. She continued to repeat this. Over and over. Sasuke didn't understand. He walked up to her and grabbed the hair at the back of her head, forcing her head up to stare into her pain-filled green eyes. What are you talking about? He hissed. Naruto has no voice, she whispered as tears flowed endlessly down her cheeks, mixing with the blood from her wounds. He has no voice, Sasuke. The raven stared at her dispassionately. He wasn't trying to be brave. He wasn't trying to make you angry. He was trying to make you understand that he can't speak. He has no voice. His throat was ripped out over a year ago. He's lucky to even be alive. Sakura saw something flicker in Sasuke's eyes, but it was gone a second later before she could identify it. He can't speak, Sasuke said in a flat tone. He can't speak, Sakura repeated. Sasuke stared at her for a minute longer before letting her go and turning back to his unconscious teammate. He walked up to Naruto and stared at him, as if the answer to his silent questions could be found on the Anbu captain. It made sense. He hadn't yelled at Sasuke. He hadn't cried out. He hadn't even said anything when Sasuke had almost burned his eyes. He had just opened his mouth, but nothing had come out. How had Sasuke missed that? Sasuke's heart fell into the pit of his stomach. He was never going to hear that voice again. That voice that had kept him going through all the hardships he'd endured. Just thinking of that voice taunting him had made him work harder. Become stronger. The voice of his teammate. His friend. His brother. Naruto was important to him. Everything about him was important. His smile. His eyes. His voice. Sasuke felt disgusted. Not with Naruto. With himself. Not because Naruto meant something to him, but because he'd done all of this on account of Naruto not speaking when Naruto couldn't speak. Sasuke hated himself. Uchiha Itachi exited the cave where the Akatsuki had just finished their meeting, looking out at the landscape around him. He squinted in order to see, his eyesight failing horribly. He estimated about another year or two before he became blind, not that it mattered to him. Itachi wasn't one to care too much about the future. This was especially obvious when one considered he didn't think leaving Sasuke alive would cause him so much trouble. He growled as he thought of his younger brother, disgusted that he'd joined an Akatsuki traitor, Orochimaru. So, the Nine Tails is with Orochimaru, huh? Hoshigaki Kisame said as he walked up beside the Uchiha prodigy, his sword Samahada resting over his shoulder. It's like killing two birds with one stone. We get the final Biju, and you kill your brother. Itachi said nothing to this, merely walking forward to head for sound. Kisame just chuckled as he followed his silent partner, knowing that Itachi was excited. After all, Naruto was the last Jinchuriki they needed to catch before they would have all the tailed demons in their possession. And the Nine Tails was the strongest of them all. With him, they would be able to control the other 8. Are you going to let me claim the Kyuubi? Kisame asked Itachi. Or are you going to take credit? The Kyuubi does not interest me. Itachi stated dispassionately. I want to rectify the dishonor my father had brought upon our clan. Kisame couldn't hold back the snicker. Itachi was saying Sasuke had dishonored their clan? Wasn't he the one who'd wiped them all out? It just seemed a little ridiculous to the ex-mist shinobi that Itachi would find Sasuke a disgrace. The Uchiha himself didn't care what Kisame thought. When he'd wanted his brother to gain power and become stronger, he hadn't meant going to Orochimaru to be his bitch and do everything the snake bastard ordered him to. An Uchiha would not be lowered to the level of a groveling slave. Not as long as Uchiha Itachi was alive to stop it. What were our orders with regard to Orochimaru? Itachi asked Kisame, having walked out of the meeting halfway through. Meetings bored him. If we encounter him, we can kill him. If not, we let him be. Our objective is the Kyuubi, everything else comes second. Kisame shot a glance at Itachi, but the Uchiha ignored it. He knew what Kisame was trying to say. Unless they ran across Sasuke, he couldn't go looking for him. Itachi understood this. He just had to make sure he did run into his little brother. The two Akatsuki members took off at a run, flying through the trees, headed for sound at breakneck speed. "Hot damn, this is cool," Verity exclaimed as she leaned with her elbows against the table before her, her head supported in her hands. She was staring at an unconscious Naruto, the chakra-sucking manacles released so his wounds could heal before his battle with the Sound 4. And the healing was very, very cool. Verity just watched as wound after wound regenerated skin and tissue to cover the exposed muscles or veins. Everything closed quickly, and the burns began to bubble backwards before they, too, were gone. It was absolutely fascinating. Once he'd completely healed, Verity had begun to cut his arm continuously with a kunai to watch it heal. Slit, bleed, heal, slit, bleed, heal. Over and over, she repeated the process, and she would have been quite content to continue for hours had her hand not been caught in a strong, bone-crunching grip and wrenched away from Naruto. She let out a cry as she was wrenched from her seat, turning to stare into angered hazel eyes. "You're exhausting his chakra," Mitsuru said, his face blank, but his eyes blazing. "We can't fight him if he has no strength." Mitsuru released her violently, sending her smashing into the wall. The purple-haired girl clutched her left arm painfully before looking at her leader. She apologized before exiting the room hurriedly, leaving the older man to do with Naruto as he wished. Mitsuru looked down at Naruto dispassionately before lifting the unconscious boy up and slinging him over his shoulder. Their battle would start soon, so he had to get the blonde ready. Orochimaru's orders. He walked through the corridor, headed for the outside door, when he encountered Sasuke, leaning against a wall by the exit. The raven turned to look at him as he neared before pushing off the wall, his hands in his pockets. "Sasuke-sama." The green-haired Sound 4 bowed his head respectfully. "Is he to fight you?" Sasuke jerked his chin in Naruto's direction. Upon receiving a nod, he continued, "He has no voice." Mitsuru cocked an eyebrow. "Oh? According to his teammate, he lost it a year ago. I don't know how he communicates, but I'd assume it's sign language." "Do you know it?" "I know enough, yes." Mitsuru replied. "Good. When he speaks, I want to know what he says." Sasuke brushed past the Sound Nin and walked down the corridor, obviously headed for the second floor. Naruto and the Sound 4 would be battling in an arena-like area, and Orochimaru and Sasuke would be able to watch the entire fight from the second floor of the main building. They were close enough to see everything and intervene if necessary, but far enough to escape if Naruto managed to get away from the Sound 4 and head for Orochimaru and Sasuke. Mitsuru dumped him on the floor in the center of the arena and the blonde jerked, his eyes slowly opening. Mitsuru held his hand out and Kaiza placed a metal choker in his hand. Before Naruto could fully recover consciousness, Mitsuru sat him up and clamped the metal instrument around the blonde's neck. Naruto's eyes snapped open at the cold around his neck and he kicked Mitsuru in the stomach before rolling backwards and getting to his feet. He looked around himself at the large arena, the Sound 4 on all sides of him. "You can use chakra." Naruto looked back at Mitsuru as he spoke. "That thing around your neck is specifically made to block Kyuubi's chakra. Wouldn't want you switching with him, now, would we?" He smiled wickedly. Naruto glared and scanned the area for Sasuke. His eyes locked on the Raven Uchiha, standing on the second-floor balcony of the main house, Orochimaru beside him. The blonde smirked when he noticed the disgusted look on Sasuke's face when the snake bastard moved closer. Serves the jerk right, Naruto thought. Naruto. He turned to look at the sound for Mitsuru having spoken. Orochimaru-sama wishes to see you fight. You will comply, or you will die. Naruto just stared at him before crossing his arms. Do you choose death? Naruto didn't reply, he just kept his arms crossed. What if we were to say your pink-haired friend will die? The blonde's eyes widened as his breath caught in his throat. He would be willing to die, but Sakura. No, he couldn't do that to her. It wasn't fair. This wasn't fair. Making him fucking choose between giving Orochimaru what the bastard wanted or his friends. Damn it. Naruto prayed one of them could read sign language, or this was going to be a long day. If you promise to not hurt the others and let them go, then I'll fight you. Otherwise, no deal. I'll find some way to kill myself, and then you'll all be fucked. Mitsuru snorted at the reply and made a seal, teleporting to where Orochimaru and Sasuke were. He relayed the message, which caused Orochimaru to sneer. Still hasty, isn't he? Very well. Orochimaru turned to look at Naruto, who was looking up at him and Sasuke. Tell Naruto-kun we will not hurt the others, and we will release them when we have measured the full extent of his power. Mitsuru bowed and returned to Naruto, telling him the message. That's not good enough. The blonde signed. It's going to have to be. Verity snapped back. Come on, let's stop stalling and get this done. One at a time, Verity. Kaiza smirked. I call first dibs. Knock yourself out. Kazuma stated as he and the other three disappeared, reappearing on the balcony with Orochimaru and Sasuke to watch the fight. Naruto breathed hard as he looked around himself, Kaiza having turned invisible the second the others had vacated the area. Naruto couldn't lose, especially not in this first fight. If he did, he knew all of his friends would be in danger. He would be useless to them, and as long as Orochimaru could find worth in him, he could keep his friends safe. Kaiza laughed as the blonde concentrated on pinpointing his location. One touch, and it was over. Even if he just grazed Naruto's cheek, he would fall unconscious, and who knew when he would wake up. As Naruto waited, he tried to remember what he could about Kaiza. He'd only fought him briefly, and all he knew was that he could turn invisible, and knock people unconscious simply by touching them. The extent of his abilities, however, was unknown to Naruto. If Kaiza touched his covered legs, would it still knock him out? If Naruto's fist connected with Kaiza's face, would that simple skin-to-skin contact knock him out? Naruto didn't know. There were too many variables, and he really wished he'd started with Verity. Naruto suddenly lurched backwards as a huge dog leapt out of the ground at his feet, its sandjaws snapping, trying to catch Naruto's leg. Shit, Naruto thought as he did a few back handsprings to put some distance between them. This guy also controlled those fucking sand dog things. Naruto did a final handspring before twisting in the air, landing behind the dog and kicking it harshly in the back, sending it back into the ground as a pile of sand. The Anbu captain then ducked, and he felt the air above him shift. He cartwheeled away from the location he'd just been standing in, seeing the ground distort beneath Kaiza's feet as the invisible sound nin followed him. He pushed off the wall behind him and spun in the air, kicking Kaiza soundly against the jaw, praying he wouldn't fall unconscious from touching his bare foot against Kaiza's skin. He heard a grunt as the sand and dirt nearby was disturbed, and blood suddenly appeared on the ground, as if Kaiza had just spat. I'm not unconscious. Good sign, Naruto thought. Okay, so it's either just his hands, or he has to know which part of his body he needs to concentrate on to force someone unconscious. Or maybe it doesn't work if the opponent willingly touches him. Not testing that theory, but at least it's something I can go with. You're pretty good, kid. He heard Kaiza mutter, but he ignored the compliment, concentrating on the other's location. He didn't know much about the others, but he did know one of them sucked chakra. He'd encountered a shinobi like that before, and had knocked him unconscious with a little trick he'd learned from Kyuubi. Of course, he didn't have the fox's chakra right now, but he figured he could improvise. He'd have to. Naruto closed his eyes and brought one hand up to his forehead, listening hard. He always found it helped him concentrate when he had something to focus on. Touching his own forehead helped him focus on how close he was to everything around him, almost like sonar, except without the sound. All he needed was for Kaiza to move, and he would know where he was. Naruto easily ducked a swing at his head, and then jumped over a swipe at his feet, his eyes still closed. To have them open would just distract him, because his eyes would be searching endlessly for something they wouldn't be able to find. The blonde did a few back handsprings to avoid more swipes and then flipped over Kaiza in the air, kicking him in the small of his back. He felt the sound nin regain his balance and lunge at him. The blonde moved his head swiftly to the side to avoid Kaiza's hand slamming right into him, the wind brushing past his cheek because he'd been so close. Too close, Naruto thought, starting to panic. He had to end this. Now. The Anbu captain slapped Kaiza's hand away forcefully before stepping close to him as quickly as he could. As he stepped inside, he grabbed Kaiza's slapped arm and twisted, hard, trying to force him off balance. The sound nin's other hand came up, and sensing it, Naruto ducked it and twisted under the arm he held, spinning behind him and wrenching Kaiza's arm up his back before kicking out the back of his knees, smashing the brown-haired man face first into the dirt. With a grunt, Kaiza became visible and Naruto hurriedly grabbed his free arm to hold it steady, ensuring the other man wouldn't be able to touch him with it. The blonde frowned as Kaiza began to laugh, his chuckle low and throaty. Kaiza must have sensed his confusion, because he answered Naruto's unasked question. "You think you've won already, don't you? You think it'll move to the next person now, right? Don't think so lowly of me, brat." Naruto's eyes widened and he hurled himself off Kaiza as he felt the other man's leg coming up. The blonde turned hurriedly, sprawled on the ground in front of the sound nin, staring at his bare foot. Kaiza had taken off his sandals and attempted to touch skin with skin. "Good thing you've got those reflexes, kid, or this fight would have been over." He smirked as he regained his footing, beginning to fade again. Shit, Naruto thought, looking around. He had to admit, he'd thought he'd won when Kaiza had been pinned. He'd been stupid to think so, and now, he was back at square one. Shit, I really don't want to use chakra. Without Kyuubi, he only had a limited supply of chakra. He was already going to be risking a lot with his plan, so he couldn't afford to use any chakra now, or in the next fight, or in the next one. Not until he got to Kazuma. Naruto flipped high in the air as more sand dogs appeared out of the ground. 4 of them. Oh, terrific, Naruto thought sarcastically. Just what I always wanted. I fucking hate dogs. Naruto made a mental note to talk to Kiba when he got out of this. He needed some serious dog training techniques. Naruto jumped over the first dog, which crashed into the wall, turning back into sand and dirt. The blonde then flipped over another dog, landing in a forward roll and getting quickly back to his feet, running across the arena with the last 3 dogs on his heels. Can't use chakra, can't use chakra, can't use chakra. The blonde repeated these words over and over in his head, 1 syllable for each footfall as he ran. He needed his chakra. Naruto ran straight at the wall, not slowing down and not stopping. He ran vertically up the wall without using chakra, and then flipped backwards behind the sand dogs. All 3 smashed into the wall as Naruto landed behind them, turning quickly to avoid getting hit by Kaiza. Damn it, the guy wasn't giving him a break. Fine, the blonde thought, annoyed. He wants to play dirty, we'll fucking play dirty. Naruto's fist flew at what appeared to be empty space, but his hand connected painfully with Kaiza's nose. The sound nin became visible for a split second, clutching his nose, and then turned invisible again. It didn't matter. That split second was all Naruto needed. He kicked Kaiza in the stomach before vaulting over him and grabbing his arms. The Anbu captain yanked backwards on Kaiza's arms, the sound nin becoming visible as he screamed. The blonde grunted, but didn't let go as Kaiza's scream amplified in pitch. He'd only heard about this move from Sakura, knowing Sasuke had performed it on Zaku during the Chunin exams. Naruto kept a firm grip on Kaiza's wrists and placed one knee against the man's back, pushing against his knee and pulling back his arms. Kaiza's scream intensified, and Naruto winced at the sound. It was like a banshee, and the blonde was almost tempted to let go, just so the other man would stop. But he couldn't do that, so he continued to pull until he heard something snap. A second later, it was followed by another snap, and Kaiza's screaming got even louder as Naruto let Kaiza's arms go, the sound nin falling limply to the ground. He was twitching, obviously still awake, but in such intense pain he couldn't move or even scream anymore. Understandable, since Naruto had just pulled both of his arms out of their sockets. Kabuto appeared before Naruto in a wisp of smoke, kneeling beside Kaiza. He looked up at Naruto with a smirk before grabbing Kaiza and disappearing with him. Naruto frowned, confused, unable to understand why Kabuto had smirked. He found out a second later when he heard the air behind him whistling and just barely managed to jump to the side, avoiding Verity's whip as it crashed against the ground right where Naruto had been standing. Shit, am I not even going to get a break? The blonde thought incredulously as he rolled to his feet, turning to the only female in the sound four. Verity was slowly retracting her whip, smirking at him as her eyes openly roved Naruto's half-naked body. After all, he was still only wearing his Junin pants. Heck, he didn't even have any shoes. I usually never miss, Verity said to him. Today must be your lucky day. Naruto frowned at this. I'd hardly call today lucky, he thought to himself. It's more like some horrible nightmare I can't wake up from. I'll try not to damage you too much, demon. Naruto winced at the demon part, but recovered quickly. You're kind of cute. I'd hate to change that by adding scars. Then again, she eyed Naruto up and down again. I guess Kyuubi makes sure you don't scar. Sasuke was pretty brutal with you, yet there isn't even a mark on you. Almost as if none of it happened. Oh, it fucking happened, you crazy bitch, Naruto thought angrily, his mind returning to all the torture Sasuke had put him through. Once I kick his ass and bring him back to Konoha, he's going to hear a nice, long speech from me. Naruto paused in his inner musings. Well, I guess he'll see a nice, long speech, since I can't talk and all, focus. The blonde shook his head, forcing his thoughts back to the present. All this idle chit-chat was making his mind wander. He just wanted to get this over with. Verity looked ready to do the same. The purple-haired girl whipped at Naruto, and he dodged it. But his eyes widened as the whip hit the wall he'd been beside and the wall exploded into bits of broken rock. Naruto couldn't stop staring at the huge hole in the wall from the whip. He turned back to Verity and saw her smirking at the stunned look on his face. If Verity caught one of Naruto's limbs, it would be ripped to shreds. Oh, did I forget to mention? I added more glass. Verity smirked. Naruto turned to her and smirked as well, an action that confused the sound nin. Oh, did I forget to mention? Naruto thought. I use whips, too. There goes holding my chakra. I'm out of options. Naruto slapped his hands together, and as he separated them, 2 chakra whips emerged. He grabbed both handles and grinned at Verity's shocked expression. And I've got 2, he thought smugly. Of course, he still hadn't perfected his double whip jutsu, but he would have to improvise. He had to get as far as he could through the sound 4, or else his friends were fucked, as was he. And so, he whipped both whips at Verity, effectively cutting her right upper arm and her left thigh. The sound nin grunted as blood began to trickle from the wounds before they healed over. Verity smirked as Naruto stared incredulously. What, you thought you were the only one with healing powers? Verity twirled the tip of her whip in her hands. In this case, I'm luckier than you are. You don't heal on your own, the Kyuubi does it for you. Me, on the other hand, she smirked, I don't need a stupid demon to make my wounds heal. It's a bloodline limit. Everybody has their weakness, Naruto thought as he whipped and hit her in the stomach, which healed over. I just have to find yours. He whipped at her again. The two continued to exchange blows. Verity's wounds healing, Naruto's not. He'd only gotten hit 3 times, but they were enough, and he was hurting a lot now. The glass made a huge difference. It felt like skin was being ripped off instead of just being cut open. To add insult to injury, once or twice, Verity had attempted to release all the glass from her whip with the jutsu she'd used in the desert. Naruto always managed to stop her, but he was starting to lose control of his whips. He'd only done this jutsu a few times, and he really didn't like the fact that he was using up chakra, either. Finally, the tides began to turn as Naruto whipped at Verity again with both whips and one of them hit the blue-eyed girl in the neck. Gasping, she stumbled back, clutching at her throat where blood started to trickle down, and didn't stop. Verity retreated her fingers, staring at them worriedly as Naruto smirked. The wound was still open, and still bleeding. It looked like he'd just found her weak spot. Before he could react, too preoccupied with his newfound discovery, Verity's whip flew at him and his head snapped to the side as the harsh leather and unforgiving glass met his cheek. You may have found my weakness, but at least I'm not as fragile as you. The girl smirked. Naruto turned his face back to Verity, blood trickling down his cheek from the wound she'd inflicted. He was pissed off, now, and she was about to find out just how pissed the blonde could truly be. He lashed out with his 2 whips again. hearing Verity cry out as he hit her on either side of her throat. She now had 3 injuries there. Ones that weren't closing. Vulnerable spots were so much fun. With an enraged cry, Verity slapped her whip at Naruto and the blonde just barely managed to get out of the way in time, getting away with only a shallow wound compared to the one he would have received had he not been fast enough. He winced as he looked down at the wound before looking back up at Verity. Great, he thought, annoyed. Now what? How the fuck am I supposed to hit just one spot on her entire body when she can kill me nice and easy? I hate my life. As Verity whipped at him again, he suddenly got an idea. He retracted his whips and rolled out of the way of hers, jumping back to his feet and running around Verity in a circle. The purple-haired girl followed him, whipping at his heels as she turned in a circle. At the last second, Naruto flipped backwards over the whip and rolled towards Verity, getting in as close as possible. Panicking at the close proximity, Verity tried to whip him again, but he rolled to the side before propelling himself forward, smashing into the girl's stomach and tackling her to the ground. Verity's whip flew from her hands and Naruto hastily turned Verity around beneath him, so she was lying on her stomach and he was sitting on her back. The Anbu captain slapped his hands together before separating them, pulling out a single chakra whip this time. You know what your weakness is besides your neck, Verity? Naruto asked via chakra as he wrapped the whip around Verity's neck, beginning to pull both ends backwards, choking the girl beneath him. Verity let out a choked gurgle, confused at the words she was seeing before her eyes, and Naruto smiled in satisfaction. You rely too much on your whip and healing powers. Those of us without them actually know how to fight. Naruto began to yank backwards, intent on severing the girl's head from her body when the whip suddenly disappeared from his hands and he felt the air rush out of his lungs. That could only mean one thing. Kazuma.
That's all for now. If you enjoyed this video, then please like, share and do comments.